Second. Here we go. Friends, welcome aboard to our Friday broadcast. I'm excited to be back with Jeff Nyquist, his website jrnyquist.blog, and today is Friday, September 12th, 2025. We got a lot to talk about today. Jeff, how you been? Welcome back, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Shannon. Nice to be back.
Well, folks, you can catch us live here on Facebook, YouTube. We're on Twitch today, MixLR, and the IceCast server over to megamanradio.com. And I hope you have brought something to drink. Jeff and I are drinking some hot liquid here, coffee and cocoa. And hey, Jeff, so much going on. Where do you want to jump in today? In fact, why don't we open up in prayer? You're a believer, like I am.
Okay.
You want to
All
open
right.
us in prayer?
All right. Yes. Dear Lord, bless this program and special blessings to the family of Charlie Kirk, who was
Yes.
assassinated 2 days ago, and that nothing bad for America will come out of this, but only something good. Amen.
You know, I think we ought to jump in right there. The mic is yours. What do you think about this assassination? This is horrible what happened.
Yeah, no, it's terrible to be shot like that in public, to be murdered in front of the world, and that's something that your children could see, and obviously this is going to float around for years. And of course, there's one of the worst things is to kill somebody because of their opinions, their beliefs. It's what the Nazis and the communists, what all totalitarians do is they kill people for disagreeing with them. So the person that shot uh, Charlie Kirk, and I just heard that he was arrested. He's been brought into custody.
Wow.
I think President Trump made that announcement publicly. I
Yes.
think he was on Fox News.
Yes, sir.
Um, so this is a crime of ideology, a crime of political belief, and of course, if you are a moral person, if you don't believe in murder, the idea of murdering someone, that you take it on yourself, that your beliefs are so good, that you are such a genius, that you have the right to take someone's life because they disagree with you politically, that in itself is one of modernity's horrendous, absolutely horrendous effects. Because we saw it with Hitler, we saw it with Stalin, we're seeing it with Putin. You know, all the people Putin has had assassinated. We see it in China with the Lao guy, which is their gulag, where the Chinese government, these are truly the followers of Mao Zedong. They murder people. And,
Yes.
and, and these, we call them totalitarians. We don't stop and think what that is. That is that they are so righteous politically. They are so right that they have the right to kill, to decide life and death for anyone. The governments in Cuba, in Venezuela, in China, in Russia, and all the communist or so-called post-communist countries that still have the KGB in charge, like Russia, they think nothing of the state's right to censor, to close down newspapers, to and to ultimately murder journalists. And Charlie Kirk, though he wasn't a journalist, he was out there. He was a publicist, and he was debating. He was a very fine debater. He's one of the finest debaters that you could ever see. Now, I
Yes.
didn't agree. I agree with most of what Charlie Kirk said. I didn't agree with this stuff on Ukraine and Russia. I thought he misunderstood Russia. But this is a debate I would have loved to have with him one day. But
Right.
I'm not going to ever get to have that debate with him because this this awful totalitarian rat, this poison in our society, shot the man while he was in front of thousands of people debating on a college campus where there's supposed to be freedom to speak and question. This is so anti-American. This is so against America and what America's founding and what America has always been about. This movement towards something better by debating, by talking things through, to start killing. This is just, and you know who's jumping for joy over this? The Russians.
Really?
Alexander Dugin's piece on Substack today. He is basically saying, oh, yeah, America's moving towards civil war. Isn't it great? This is what you need to do. We need to unite with Russia. MAGA needs to unite with Russia and fight a global civil war. More violence, right? We're going to fight a civil war in America. This is what Alexander Dugin and the Russian information or disinformation system is calling for. MAGA's got to rise up and smash these people. You know, it's very funny that it was Russia behind these leftists, and all this wokeism was basically created by Marxists who were from behind the scenes cheered on by the KGB. Isn't it
Wow.
ironic? It's called provocation. This is the main method that the communists always use, provocation. You create a situation where you provoke people into doing something that will destroy them. You will use to destroy them. So you've had a lot of, I mean, look, Rush Limbaugh's not alive anymore. It would be interesting if he were here, what he would say. He would have a lot to say. But we have this Alex Jones character who has this huge following. And Alex Jones, what is the first thing out of his mouth? It is war, it is war, it is war. This is not what we want to hear. War against whom? One guy shot Charlie Kirk. One guy. One person. It's on him. It's his responsibility. He's the one that's going to be tried for it. What do we suddenly have group guilt? Yeah, there are people on the left who like it. There's people mocking Charlie Kirk right now on X and which used to be called Twitter. There's people doing that. You know, do you think that they're winning anybody to their cause? Do you think that decent people are going to agree with this? Because most people right now in America are decent. They're
Right.
revolted by this. They're absolutely revolted. Yes, we have more indecent people now than we've had before, ever before. It's true. There's been a degeneration in America. But civil
But
war?
if they're decent, everybody should agree this is wrong. What happened?
Yeah.
I mean, number one, the guy's a coward who shot him,
Yes.
and
Shooting an unarmed man from what, 200 yards away.
even in the old West, if two guys wanted to battle it out, you didn't shoot a man in the back. You didn't fire unless you had been fired upon.
That's
I mean,
right.
there's what I mean at the very most base level. This shooter was a coward. Now, if you're just joining us, we're here with Jeff Nyquist. He is a political analyst, expert on Russian history, and no one like Jeff can analyze news and politics and put it all together and come up with a coherent synopsis like he can. So, Jeff, I was shocked when I heard about this. Now, I didn't know much about Charlie Kirk. I think I'd seen him a few times. Now, some have been following him and his channel for a while, but I'd only come across him a few times, and he would have like a table that would say, prove me I'm wrong on some topic. And I
hmm
listened a little bit, and I said, this guy's bold, and he's very articulate. And
Very.
as I have looked into him, he was a Bible-believing Christian, loved Jesus, family man, had two infants. I mean, it's horrible what was going on. Uh, there have been some reports, and I don't know if this is just talk or speculation or what, but some people tracked a jet that took off about an hour after shooting, a private jet, and they said it turned off its radar beacon for a period of time.
A
And some
jet,
were
a
alleged
jet from
Utah
the.
airport.
Okay.
So there's a picture of it, and you can track flights now pretty easily with tail numbers. And someone tracked this, and they said at some point in flight, it turned off its radar beacon. And there's a question: why did they do that? And could this have been a crew that killed Charlie, and they were getting their man out of Dodge? And that was just, one wild theory.
hmm
There's been some photographs of two guys. If this is actually from that meeting, they seem to be doing some strange hand signals. And even my wife said this guy had to have been paid. Who paid him to shoot him? Now, I know that there's details supposed to be coming out today. I saw the clip with President Trump saying, we believe we have the guy. The FBI is going to make a statement today. But I heard early on that the rifle that was retrieved apparently had, LGBTQ writing on it. Now,
There's something also strange. Do you know that there's a book titled The Shooting of Charlie Kirk, a comprehensive account of the Utah Valley University attack that was
what?
published on September 9th, just one day before the assassination of Charlie Kirk? The book's listing was briefly visible on Amazon but was quickly removed, and the author's identity remains unknown.
Wow.
This book's timing and its release has sparked widespread speculation and
Very
conspiracy
interesting.
theories online,
I
right?
didn't know about that. Wow. Now, I saw some of the footage.
Hmm.
When, when a friend alerted me to it, I went over to X and I saw some of the graphic footage of, the shot and just the blood gushing out of him. I think they hit him in probably one of his main arteries in
The
his neck.
carotid artery they hit.
Carotid. Okay.
Yeah,
If that
yeah.
thing is cut, I mean, you bleed out pretty quick, right?
Yeah, I was about sitting down just to do a podcast when my the host of the podcast, caught the video. They took a lot of this graphic stuff down from the
Yes.
internet, so I got to see it. I kind of wish I hadn't seen it. But yeah, it was clear
Yes.
from the hit that this is what killed him. And of course, you knew if you saw the video before they announced his death, you knew that he was dead. And they were delaying the announcement to notify his family to, it was humane. But it was also smart for the police,
Yes.
because you don't want to necessarily, if the guy shot from that far away, he might not have been able to see whether he actually made the shot or not,
Good
because
point.
as soon as he fires that round, he's hiding that rifle in the woods and he's getting away.
Good point on that. So I saw that blood coming out of me was just gushing out. It was horrible. I wish I had seen it too. And then he goes down. I mean, he's gripping onto the microphone as he's going down. And um, what the point I want to make is there was an interview that I caught. It may have been on Infowars. I don't know where, but there was a guy there on the scene who said somebody came up to Charlie Kirk and said he wanted to ask him a question on, I think it was religion, and he was pushing him, I want to ask you a question. And then this same guy, you hear him on the audio clips uh, asking him about guns,
Hmm.
and he does it in a very what's the word I'm looking for? He does it. He does it in a way that it makes me think this whole thing was orchestrated and prearranged, and he was probably in the part of the setup. Because to be asked that question and then for him to get shot, I think there was a timing there. What I'm saying basically is I think that there was more than one person involved. What's your thoughts on this right now?
Well, if this, I just sent you a link to this, uh, this claim that an author published a book on Charlie Kirk shooting one day before the assassination. And if you click on that, you will see it's got the actual cover of it. Somebody got it allegedly off of Amazon. Now, it's being reported by different news outlets. It could be a false story, but
Okay.
if this is true, then you are dealing with a coordinated assassination with a very scary information campaign. This is and you can see the alleged author is Anastasia J. Casey, publishes book Charlie Kirk shooting one day before the killing on Amazon, only for the book to be delisted and author not located along with fueling. Uh,
Oh my
you
goodness.
know, I don't know if this is true. I mean, maybe we're going to find out more if this has been an apocryphal story. There's news. There's some news outlets reporting that it definitely was on Amazon, but we will see. Um, and this could be some kind of facsimile from Amazon. Um, I don't understand. Do you are you able to look at it?
I haven't gotten it yet. You sent it back to Omega Man Radio at
No, no, I
protonmail.com?
said it in the studio chat here that we're on right
Oh,
now.
oh, excuse
If
me. I
you
was
if
looking
you
in the wrong
click on
place.
it, you will see it.
Okay,
And
I'm sorry.
that's
I
one
got it
of
now.
them. There's a number of them. If you go online,
Yes,
people, you will see this stuff. And the thing is that you know, News 24 English 2 hours ago is reporting this, um, and people are asking who is Anastasia J. Casey.
yes.
Uh, this is Economic Times is reporting it. Economic
Here's a
Times.
screenshot.
This is the India Times.
Okay.
3 hours ago, who is Anastasia J. Casey? Mysterious book, The Shooting of Charlie Kirk, surfaces online a day before the tragedy. Screenshots have circulated. Now, um, maybe this is a hoax, but did the shooter do this? The shooting of Charlie Kirk that was published a day before the shooting, sparking conspiracy theories attributed to an author named Anastasia J. Casey. The book raised immediate questions due to its listed publishing date, September 9th. Um, and it's this is I don't know, but the
Oh,
possibility to make fabrications now,
let
online
me get this
fabrications.
up on the screen. I just realized I can do a share screen of this,
Yeah,
and that'd be
let people
great to
see
put it
this.
up.
The cover is very odd, right?
Okay,
Apparently, this was circulating before the assassination.
check this out, folks. This is an exclusive. I had not heard of this at all. Look what has been uncovered. Snapshot of the shooting of Charlie Kirk from what looks like a Amazon listing,
Yeah,
September 9th.
yeah, that's the day before the shooting.
No question this was
Yeah.
premeditated. But I think that there's more involved than just this one lone shooter up there on the rooftop. Now, I didn't know this, but I heard since that Charlie was wearing a bulletproof vest or piece of body armor. What do you know about that?
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, look, if he probably has received death threats. If
Yes,
somebody much more insignificant like myself has received death threats, you know that he has received them because, look, he was uniquely talented. He had a physical presence. He was a large man. He was brilliant, so he could debate anybody, and his debating skills. He was wicked sharp. You didn't want to go up against this guy unless you were very, very well prepared. And this guy studied, this guy worked very hard because he had command of all facts at the tip of his tongue at all times. And
yes.
facts on, American politics and all of these issues, there's an awful lot to know. And he could get into the gritty details very quickly. So, and this is what made him, I think, a threat. I mean, look, he was 31 years old. He was very young. Imagine what he was going to do in the future if he had lived, right?
Yes. Probably run for office.
Um, Someone I know who is also quite brilliant, uh, a uh, a scholar uh, who is from Northwest Africa, wrote a rather brilliant piece about political assassinations. She was quoting Machiavelli, saying that political assassinations rarely work because they backfire. They tend to backfire. And that is a kind of comforting thing to believe, and you can quote Machiavelli on that, but don't believe it for a second. It does. Political assassinations can backfire, but um, it is, Stalin had a saying about murdering political murder. He said, "No man, no problem." Right. So you look at the problem that a person creates for a totalitarian, for somebody like the shooter, who obviously put, I guess, on the bullet um, things related to Antifa and transgenders. Did you
Okay.
hear that report?
Where is it? Pro Antifa, pro transgender?
Right. Um, and so, the we'll find out more. So the assumption is, and it is an assumption, but I think it's a fair one, because it goes to motive. Because Charlie Kirk was not one to um, go along with transgenderism and sex changing children. He was not somebody who was going to be siding with Antifa. And
Right.
Antifa is a violent communist organization that would categorize you and me as fascists, Shannon.
Wow.
We would be fascists, and of course, they dehumanize fascists, and they have
Okay.
used violence against students. You've seen some of the campus violence from Antifa. It's very real, and it's rather raw. Killing people.
Yes.
Now we get into that, and of course we know that we had a shooter hit President Trump in the ear and killed an innocent bystander, seriously wounded some others in that event a year ago, July. We had the guy at the golf course who was going to set up a shot on President Trump at a golf course. We are getting the 60s were known to be violent, because in the 60s you had JFK and RFK being assassinated. You had Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. You had a number of these high profile assassinations. We're getting into this territory now, and you know how unstable and violent the 60s were here in this country, and the concerns that many of us had. I mean, I was a child then. In 1968, I was 10 years old. I remember the JFK assassination. I was 5 years old. I remember watching the funeral on television. This is a very dark place to go for America. You don't look. World War I was started when Archduke Francis Ferdinand, the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary, was murdered in Sarajevo in 1914. This triggered World War I, a war in which over 20 million people died. And it probably, you wouldn't have gotten World War II where what, 55, 65 million people died. You wouldn't have gotten that mega death if that one assassination hadn't happened. And that assassination work, the Austrian-Hungarian dynasty no longer exists. They don't have a monarch anymore. There is no Austria-Hungary anymore as a result of the chain of events from that assassination. Don't tell me assassinations don't work. This is really what the tragedy is. Now, God is providential. I think he has a plan. I really do. I can see that in history. So God is going to use all things for the good. But in the meantime, we have to suffer with the bad when these things happen. We have to admit evil is real. Evil can be effective. And we have to cope with it in this world where we live. And this is a real evil here. And I want to caution everybody on the right, we should not countenance any kind of reaction. You've got people calling, surprising list of people calling for smashing the left, destroying the left, jailing people, taking away their right of free speech. No, this is the exact reaction that the communists want, that the Russians want, and the Chinese want. They're rubbing their hands, hoping to cause us to be at each other's throats. So it's very important that some of the leaders on the left, like AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, have said this is not acceptable. That violence is not acceptable in American politics. This is what has made America special, that we can debate, that we can talk. The very introduction of intimidation. It's bad enough, by the way, DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, is so evil. And that's what Charlie Kirk really on campuses stood up against and did a very fantastic job explaining why it was wrong. Because they use it to take away opportunities from people who are smarter. And they also and give it to people just on the basis of their skin color. That is a form of prejudice. If somebody gets something because they're not white, that's wrong. Just like it would be wrong if someone got a job because they were white. It's just reverse racism. And he was very keen at pointing that out. And but it was the left, it was the communist left that really uses this. If you go to the program of the Communist Party USA, and the Communist Party USA has infiltrated the Democratic Party, and they support Democratic candidates, the Communist Party does. The Road to Socialism, which is their program. It was the current version. I think it came out in 2005 or 6, and they just make a few tweaks to it. It says as follows: we're forming a majority coalition out of women and minorities, immigrants and transgenders, and we're going to get the supermajority so that we can basically create a socialist country in America and push past the Constitution. In other words, get rid of the Constitution and all its guarantees of liberty. And then we will, have this ideal society. And this is exactly what the Democratic Party has been doing. It's been attacking, especially, women and minorities. Well, who is the odd man out? White men. What is the percentage of white men going to college now? Do you know that, Shannon?
No, sir.
Tiny minority. Tiny
Wow,
minority.
really?
Yeah. White men are dropping out. Because why? Because they go to a campus, and what do they find? The women get an advantage over them.
Yes.
The non-whites get an advantage over them. I mean, this goes back. I applied for a job with a government intelligence agency more than 35 years ago. And I was in graduate school. I had very, very good grades. I was working on a PhD. You'd think they'd want to at least give me an interview. They never called me. I filled out the forms. There's quite a few forms. They never called me. So I finally called them and I said, I filled this out. Why aren't you calling me for an interview? Well, you're a white male and we're not hiring any of those. We're only hiring women and minorities right now. That was in 1987, right?
Good grief.
So this has been going on a long time. So a lot of very bright people had to work as janitors or do other things because opportunities were closed to them. The things they wanted to do or trained to do were closed to them because of their skin color and their gender. And, very self-righteously, the left says, you have been, you're racist, you're prejudiced. Now it's really good. It's our turn. We get to do it to you. Well, wait a minute. If it was wrong to begin with to deny people something because of their race, if that was wrong 100, 200 years ago, why is it suddenly right now? Right?
Absolutely.
Two wrongs don't make a right. And that was
Jeff,
what Charlie Kirk was saying. Yeah.
I think it's these radical professors that have infiltrated the schools, and they've indoctrinated the kids over generations. And as you traced it back, was this all part of a Russian plot to infiltrate and corrupt our school system?
Well, yeah, the Russians, if you go back and you read Benjamin Gitlow and you read a guy named Whitney who wrote Reds in America in 1924, yeah. I mean, you had communist anarchists throw a bomb through the window of the U.S. Attorney General, Palmer. And then you had the Palmer raids, and that was the first Red Scare in America back when Woodrow Wilson was president. This is how J. Edgar Hoover emerged within the FBI. He was just a lawyer. And they were really concerned about what communism was going to do. And if you know the story of John Reed, and Benjamin Gitlow talks about it in his book Through the Whole of Their Lives, that there was an indigenous socialist movement in America, and the three leaders, Jim Larkin, John Reed, and Benjamin Gitlow, were kind of independent guys. And they tried to form an American Communist Party. This is an interesting story. But the Russians were so strong within the socialist movement because of Lenin's success in Russia in the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. When the two different communist parties initially formed in America, one in Chicago, one in New York, the Russians got control of those communist parties, and Lenin forced them to unite. And John Reed ended up going to see Lenin in Moscow, got trapped there where he died. Jim Larkin got put in Sing Sing and was expelled to Ireland because he was Irish. And of course, Benjamin Gitlow, Stalin wanted to put the American delegation on their knees and make them beg forgiveness for something they really didn't do in the 1920s. And Benjamin Gitlow told the Americans, don't you dare, say that we're guilty of this in front of Stalin. And of course, they were expelled Benjamin Gitlow was expelled from the Communist Party. So anyone with any kind of independent movement was kicked out. And yes, it was a Russian when the parties were combined, when the Communist Party USA was formed in 1919 in Chicago, when the final form came, they swore allegiance to Moscow. And by the way, they still do. Moscow is the general staff of the communist movement, and the communists in Russia are the peer leaders, the first among equals. And it's true in China. The Russians brought communism to China. They supported Mao Zedong
Yes.
and the Yan'an Way. And this is the thing that people don't understand. What Putin is doing in Russia. Putin is KGB. KGB is the sword and shield of the Communist Party. It's not an independent group. They are communists with guns, specially
Yes.
trained to advance the communist cause. Putin himself said it. I didn't burn my party card. He said this in a press conference in 2018. I was a communist. I joined the Communist Party not because I was required to as a member of the KGB, but because I liked socialist ideas. This is what he has
Oh
said
boy.
publicly, right? And then you
Yes.
say, well, Putin's a Christian and stuff. No, you know what he says? He says, well, Christianity is the same as Leninism.
Really?
Lenin, yeah, he has said that on numerous occasions. I've watched the video feed. I've read the
So that's
translations.
that's all a ploy to try to gain support from American Christians.
Yes, from naive
When
Christians who don't really look beyond the fine print. When Putin was first on Larry King, and this was in October of 2000. I think it was October of 2000, right after the submarine Kursk sank,
yes.
and it was he was on Larry King, and Larry King, it was all going around, the media circuit that Putin wore a cross and that had been a secret Christian and so on. His mother had gotten this cross from the Holy Land, blah blah blah. So Larry King, being a kind of a prying, inquisitive kind of guy, as we remember him, he kept bugging Putin in the interview. It was the first time Putin was on American TV. He was going to the UN to give a speech, and Larry King couldn't get him to give a Christian confession, right? Couldn't get him to
Oh,
do that. And
okay.
and King was getting frustrated, and so King said, "Well, what do you believe in? Why don't you tell us?" Because
Yes.
he wouldn't say anything more than the story about, he had a dacha and there was a fire and the cross survived intact. And so what does Putin say? I believe in the power of man. This was a translation given on the fly during the broadcast. I believe in
Okay.
the power of man. That's a Marxist Leninist answer,
Wow.
right? Because Christians don't say, I believe in the power of man. That's not a Christian answer.
Right.
So if you saw the interview Tucker Carlson did in Moscow with Putin, Tucker also tried to get Putin to talk about his religious belief, but Putin was straightforwardly communist in all of his answers. Now you say, why could he not, just if he's pretending to be a Christian, which he has done and he's gone to churches, why can't he
Right.
just lie? Well, he can give gestures that you and I might say, oh my gosh, he's a Christian. Look, he wears a cross, or he goes to this Orthodox church. But
Yes.
he can't because his fellow cadres, communist cadres, the KGB folks in Russia would be demoralized if he actually openly said it in plain language.
Ah.
And in fact, when Putin first went to Cuba, and you can look this up, a Cuban journalist asked whether he was a communist. Natural
Okay.
question. I think it was 2001 he went to Cuba. And you know what Putin answered? He said, call me a pot, but heat me not. Or another translation would be, put me in the oven, but don't turn it on, right? However you want to translate the Russian. So,
What's that supposed to mean?
well, it's what is known as Aesopian language, which the communists are famous for.
Okay.
You cannot say certain things publicly because the anti-communists or the people who are watching will catch on what you're really doing. So
Okay.
you have to hide it in plain sight. Hide it. Use language that your own followers will understand and go, he's one of us. There's not a problem. You make sure they understand so they don't demoralize. Look, a KGB officer told me that he knew that the 1991 fall of the Soviet Union was a fraud, and he was working in the KGB office in Vienna at the time, right? at the KGB residence in Vienna, and he said we all had the TV on, and we were watching the giant crowds in Moscow. You remember the Soviet Union was coming down. You had um, the August coup in 1991, and and he said we suddenly saw the statue of Felix Dzerzhinsky, the founder of the Cheka, the KGB. We saw that statue being gently lowered by a crane and carried away, not torn down and completely destroyed by the mob, right? Carefully taken down. And he said, we all breathed a sigh of relief because we knew it was all under control.
Oh boy.
Right? I mean,
Yes.
that is how they knew. That was the signal they knew. Ah, all right, nothing to worry about. And he went to the head of his department, who became the head of the KGB, General Leonid Shabarshin, and he said, what's going on? Have we lost? And this is after when the Soviet Union fell, and Shabarshin said, oh no, the plan is going on fine. But we've had some setbacks. Things didn't go exactly as planned, but it's all good. We're still on track. Tell me about the banks we control in Austria, because we need to move KGB and party money overseas so we can acquire companies in the West.
Oh boy.
Right? Infiltration.
What do you think? Well, what's your thoughts in on what was the real reason for the orchestrated fall of the Soviet Union?
Well, it is to infiltrate us, and what they've infiltrated the most is the right. Is they want to see, look at who was always wanting. You go back to George McGovern, who ran against Nixon in 1972. Did George McGovern want to do? He wanted to pull apart the U.S. military. He wanted to weaken us militarily. And during the Vietnam War, who was it that was against holding the line against communist aggression, military aggression in Southeast Asia? They didn't want to say the communists were invading Vietnam and Cambodia. They blamed Nixon. Here, the communist armies were in the jungles of Cambodia, using the Ho Chi Minh Trail to attack Vietnam in its flank. And the Cambodian government was keeping it secret from its own people that communist armies were traversing their jungle areas. I mean, it would have been a scandal, right?
Yes.
So what does Nixon do? He goes into Cambodia to attack the communist bases in the Cambodian jungle. And the U.S. press blows a whistle on it and says Nixon has invaded Cambodia. No, what are North Vietnamese armies doing in Cambodia, a neutral country? The communists invaded Cambodia, and Nixon was responding to that invasion. Of course,
yes.
The Cambodian government fell, right, because of it, because the Cambodian people were so outraged that their own government kept it a secret from them that the communist armies were traversing their territory in the jungles, right?
Yes.
So look, and the Ho Chi Minh Trail wasn't a trail; it was a superhighway. I mean, with Russians controlling the anti-aircraft units up and down that highway. So, I mean, we've been fighting this communist bloc. Look at the parade last week in Beijing. The parade, you had Vladimir Putin at this Chinese military parade. Did you see any of the footage from the parade?
I heard about it.
You had goose-stepping soldiers. It was really impressive, the discipline of these Chinese soldiers. They were marching. They had laser weapons, rows upon rows of laser weapons, missiles. Of course, a lot of them, I think a lot of these weapons were plywood mock-ups because they didn't want the world to see the real thing, because experts would say, oh my gosh, look at this. They were hiding their hands, so to speak. And so some people will say, oh, they don't really have the weapons. Well, if you're having a parade, why do you have to put the real thing there where people can look at it? Experts can look at it. You don't want that. But anyway, you had this giant parade, and Kim, Little Rocket Man, was there, the dictator of North Korea.
Oh boy.
All these representatives of all these socialist countries. The socialist camp was the technical term that the Russian generals in their literature would use, Russian generals and colonels writing about World War III would use in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. We called it the communist bloc, the socialist camp. This is what they called themselves. And that camp still exists. And
so North Korea, China,
Brazil,
Russia,
Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea,
oh my goodness,
a bunch of South Africa, a bunch of African countries, Look at
They're all united.
Venezuela. And I should mention this. Look,
Oh,
I've been working with Lee Wheelbarker and Johnny Anderson, taking satellite photos and analyzing what is there in Venezuela, where they just had a mobilization of 4.5 million men by Nicolas Maduro. And there's Nicolas Maduro out there. You can see the videos. He's carrying what appears to be a field marshal's baton. He's in military fatigues. He's standing, there's thousands and thousands of soldiers around him chanting, and they're jumping up and down, and he is with great satisfaction grasping this field marshal's baton. And they're talking about, let the Americans come, we're going to wipe them out. Why is he mobilizing? Why is Lukashenko in Belarus mobilizing? You've got this today on the 12th. Zapad 2025 has begun, a giant military exercise in Russia. A
oh
couple
boy.
of days ago, you had 19 Russian drones, and at least one of them was armed because it hit a Polish person's house and blew the roof off of the house. You had 19 drones enter Poland. 19 drones. They shot some of them down. They scrambled fighters from as far away as Holland, Italy, Germany, Poland, and they shot a number of them down. Some of them crashed. What was that all about? Russia is committing acts of war on Polish soil. There was 2 weeks
Yes.
ago a Russian drone violated Polish airspace. This isn't just in the border, it went deep. South of Warsaw, this thing hit a power line and blew up. Now, it
Wow.
didn't intend to hit the power line. Probably the one that hit the house was just flying very low, and it was a 2-story house, and it just clipped the roof, right? Blew the roof off. But this was an armed drone. This thing had a charge on it. This could have blown up a tank. But where was the
Right.
drone headed? If you go to the strip where this drone was launched, which is a place southeast of the city of Brest, this drone was headed for the largest ammunition dump in Poland. Now, here's a funny little side note that nobody has caught on to, but hours after this emergency, which lasted a number of hours, where these drones crossed into Poland, you had an explosion in Estonia, a NATO country, at a rail yard. Now, this giant mushroom cloud came up over this rail yard. Nobody's talking about what was there. What would explode like that? Was it fuel tanks? Did they
Right.
hit a train with NATO ammunition on it? I don't know. But you see, this thing with Charlie Kirk, it is not a coincidence, and I would not be surprised if there is a connection to the communist apparatus connected back to Moscow about get somebody to shoot a prominent conservative.
Yes.
Because what is happening now is Russia is increasing the pressure on NATO, might even invade the Savaki Gap in the next couple of weeks. When this exercise ends, they had an exercise. It was actually Zapad 2011 Zapad 2023, which they basically the exercise didn't begin until 2022. They didn't call it that. They ended the exercise was it in 2023? But it was weird. They had this exercise which became the invasion of Ukraine, right? So now they're having this exercise on NATO's border, all up and down the border, directly threatening the Baltic states. These are NATO countries, directly threatening Poland. They're violating their airspace. Now Poland, they've closed the border. They're closing the airspace along the Baltic and Polish border. Poland is moving troops up to the border. Germany's rushing troops to the border. And this is very scary. But now look what's happening. Tomorrow in Great Britain, there's going to be protest marches because they've got this prime minister. Some of my British friends just call him a communist, Keir Starmer.
Right.
And they're arresting British people for saying, we don't want to be importing more Muslim people here. This is a problem. And they're arresting them, putting them in jail. And the country's had enough. They've got rape gangs. They had the incident in Dundee, Scotland, where a
Sure.
12-year-old pulled out an axe and a knife defending her 14-year-old sister from rape, right?
Yep.
And they arrested the 12-year-old. They arrested a minor who was scared out of her wits, who thought that these Muslims wanted to rape her sister.
Right.
Brave
They
little
probably did.
12-year-old girl. Yeah. I mean,
They do all the time over there. And
So
the
so this has enraged
grooming?
the British public. There's this march, and because people are arrested in Britain for saying, look, we don't want to be a Muslim country. We don't want to be flooded with foreigners who change our country. Who the majority of boys, the largest, the most common boy's name now in newborns in the United Kingdom is Muhammad.
Wow.
You don't want this. So but they're jailed if they say, look, we don't want our government to do this. No, no, you're going to jail. You're arrested. You made this statement on X. You made this statement online. They're going after people. So what do? They put up the flag, the British flag. I think the
Yep.
English flag, the St. George flag, I think it's called.
Right?
They put up this flag in protest, and the police are going down, taking the flag down.
This sounds like
Ooh.
communist Russia.
Well, you see, the thing is, it sounds like civil war. Well, who wants civil war? You go to Alexander Dugin, the Russian propagandist, you go to his Substack, and you could see he's just rubbing his hand. Yes, MAGA needs to now join with Russia in a world civil war. This is what he says today on his Substack. A world civil war. So what does Russia get out of it? Russia is now mobilized. They're in a war. They've already mobilized. They're putting 1 million men together, and Belarus has military union with Russia. Let's face it, it's just an extension of Moscow's
Okay.
empire. And you got Venezuela, 4.5 million men. You know that things are going to happen in Cuba and Mexico is on the side of these people. Mexico's saying,
Sure
if
they
you
are.
touch these cartels, it's an act of war. The president of Mexico has said this. She said this. So
Because she's in partnership with the cartel.
she's a communist. Sure. And
Yep.
Maduro look, drug trafficking, red cocaine. Go back to Joe Douglas's book, Red Cocaine. This whole, cocaine trafficking network comes out of the FARC, comes out of the communists.
Right.
Who do you think Pablo Escobar was? His chief of intelligence was a Cuban DGI guy.
Wow.
I mean, this is known. So, and
Yes.
of course they say, well, he was ex-DGI. There's no such thing. You don't get out of the DGI or the KGB. This is, you're in for life. As
Wasn't
someone once said, you leave that through the smokestack of the incinerator. You don't. It's like the mafia. You get in and you're not allowed out.
right. Wasn't Ortega from Nicaragua also communist?
Yes, and by the way, he's the dictator there now. They got
He's
rid
still
of the
there?
Nicaraguan constitution. He's still there. There's Russians that are building military infrastructure in Nicaragua. And Venezuela, let me tell you about Venezuela. They have intermediate range missiles in Venezuela in a mountain. Tiuna, I think, is the name of the fortress in that spot. The Russians have tunneled out a mountain. That's a mountain that's over 4,000 feet tall, right next to
Wow.
Caracas, with double rail tunnels running into it. Running into a tunnel, goes under part of the city, goes under another mountain, pops up in an airfield, and what is it? It's all cartel aircraft in this little hidden away in this little valley, this airfield.
Yes.
This is what they do. It's how they finance their revolution. In Venezuela, the Bolivarian militia, the National Guard of Venezuela, all the patriotic Venezuelan generals fled to Miami. They took over. They just gave them cartel money. They bought off the Venezuelan generals. These people are all part of the whole thing. The communists control. That is a communist country, Venezuela. There are Russian and Chinese troops in Venezuela right now, and
I
Hezbollah
remember
is there.
Hezbollah
Right.
too? Oh,
Yes.
my goodness.
And in fact, in 2006, the German press reported that they were meeting with the Iranians, the Venezuelan officials, about putting intermediate range Iranian missiles in Venezuela. And maybe they're going to claim that but on the side of this mountain, there are 22 intermediate range missile tubes in this mountain.
And those things could hit America.
Yes, they can hit New York if they're a certain kind of Russian intermediate range missile.
Well, when I used to live in Costa Rica and Panama, you could fly back to America in about 4 hours.
Right?
It's not that far
No,
from Central America, and then
you
get
don't
over
need.
into
No.
you cross over from Panama into South America, and you're right there at Colombia and Venezuela.
Just about every intermediate range missile can hit Washington from there. So you talk about a nuclear attack, and it's coming from the south. Look, we've got our
Yes.
Interceptor rockets, most of them in Alaska. Because why? Because we're expecting an attack over the pole. You
Okay.
send missiles from China or Russia, they're going to come close to the North Pole. They're going to go through the polar region to get to us. That's just the
Yes.
physics of it because the Earth is a globe. But Venezuela is coming over the Caribbean, right?
Wow.
And this is there's you can see this mountain, 22 tubes. And by the way, the implication is that they're reloads, that there's an elevator system in that mountain. And you look at the
Okay.
dirt or the volumes of dirt excavated from inside that mountain, it's
Yes.
tremendous. And the rebarb, they have cement plants. They've got huge numbers of cement trucks. They are building inside that mountain a huge fortress. What's
Amazing.
in that mountain, right?
Folks, we're live with J.R. Nyquist. If you're just joining us, I remember a few years ago, the news was reporting Russian blackjack bombers, the ones that carry nuclear payloads,
Yeah.
were going three at a time and landing in Venezuela. They were flying nonstop.
Yep. I'll
Um,
tell you something else. There's an airfield, a strategic airfield in southern Cuba. And if you look at the satellite pictures of it, you will see there are kitchen missiles stacked up all along the sides of that airfield on one side of it. What is a kitchen missile? It's a KH-22. It can go Mach 4.6 and it's a carrier killer. It'll destroy any
wow.
ship. And it's got the same kind of homing system that the Exocet missile has. That is, if it loses its target, it'll search for another one, another ship to hit. And at Mach 4.6, you can't stop something moving Mach 4.6. At least you can't stop it very easily. And
No.
that there are, I think we counted around 20 of those missiles stacked up by that airfield. Now, it's a funny thing. That missile can't be it doesn't have a launcher. It has to launch from a Russian and or Chinese strategic bomber, a blackjack type bomber. It has
Okay.
to it's the only thing, it's the launch platform. And it's right by an airfield. So the question is, there's bunkers around this airfield. Are there Russian strategic bombers in those bunkers? Or will they fly them down, arm them, and then is the Caribbean an American lake? Or is it? Could
Oh
they
my
deny
goodness.
us control of our own sea lanes? Because if you look at the range, that covers the entire. I mean, it's exactly the range of a kitchen missile to Miami from that airfield.
Jeff, I'm not hearing about any of this in the mainstream news. This
No,
is
you're not.
this is terrible.
This is being kept from the American people. The fact that there are missiles in Venezuela, and the fact that there's this buildup in our own hemisphere. People talk about we're surrounding Russia, we're evil, NATO's encroaching on Russia. But wait a minute, the Chinese are in Mexico. They got Cuba
Yes.
right off the coast of Florida, and they're building Venezuela into a gigantic. Venezuela now, and Maduro has bragged, he's stronger than Saddam Hussein ever was. He's stronger. He's probably stronger than Iran. Iran can't put
Wow.
4.5 million people under arms. I don't think. I think they built this Venezuela into a regional power, and I think there's probably nuclear warheads under that mountain because we can't detect a nuclear warhead that's under a mountain. Why have they built a mountain? What are they hiding under there? Why is the rail
Yep.
tunnel going to that mountain mostly underground from the airfield?
Would he be planning to use his people there in Venezuela in the event of an American invasion, or do you think their thought is they're going to put them boots to the ground and march them right up through Central America?
Yeah, well, we can't invade Venezuela. Look at the terrain. 4.5 million men under arms. The country has
It's massive.
nuclear weapons that could hit Washington, D.C. We're not going to
Yeah.
invade that country. Look, they're claiming that they are mobilizing because of this little tiny task force that's attacking the narcos in the Caribbean, right? It's got 4,500 Marines.
I heard about that just
4,500
the other
Marines.
day.
How can 4,500 Marines fight 4.5 million men under arms?
The last update I got is we had a carryover there, and we were being buzzed by some Venezuelan F-16s.
It was an assault. They're assault carriers that are carrying Marines, not an aircraft
Okay.
carrier. But
Okay.
I mean, I haven't heard that there's a carrier there yet, aircraft carrier, but they're assault carriers. And
Okay.
yes, two Venezuelan F-16s, and notice they've got American equipment because Venezuela was an ally of the U.S. at one point.
Right.
They buzzed a carrier and they were carrying anti-ship missiles. I mean, not a carrier, they buzzed a destroyer carrying anti-ship
Destroyer.
missiles.
Okay.
So, and the U.S. was alarmed at that and said, don't do that. Don't be buzzing our fleet like that. Because why? Because there's no real warning time. If they get close enough, they could sink an American ship. And so we would need to shoot those, we're basically warning them that puts the commander of the destroyer in the position where he might have to shoot down those aircraft because they're a threat, right?
Yes.
Um, and so this is getting really scary in our own hemisphere. So who's surrounding who? The Russians are
Right.
there. They built that mountain. This is, by the way, you could tell if you look at Russia's dugout. They've got 7 underground cities in the Urals. They've done the same thing in their own country. The
Yes.
whole border with NATO is dug out with fallout shelters and tunnel systems. It's all honeycombed, all underground. Why? Because where are the troops going to go when you have a nuclear war? They go into those shelter systems and tunnels.
Yes.
That's what you
As
do, right?
as you lay this out, Jeff, it's becoming more and more apparent to me that I believe this is a uh, communist Russian false flag operation, and they want to incite civil war in America. And while we are trying to deal with that, we're fighting each other. This could be the perfect setup for the Dmitry Duduman dream.
Yeah, well, look at what's happened globally. Isn't it a coincidence? You have just on the eve of this Russian military exercise, which could become an invasion of NATO, you have the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which has just thrown everybody into political polarity mode.
Yep.
You have a potential civil war in Great Britain or revolution in Great Britain, where the British public is just completely out of their minds, upset with their government. And there's going to be a
Yep.
march tomorrow. We'll see how that goes. You've got the French government in crisis. You've got the Japanese prime minister resigning. Japan, a very important component in our
I
alliance
didn't know
system.
that.
Yeah,
Wow.
he's resigned. You've got political instability breaking out everywhere, right? And you've got Poland and the Baltic states so threatened, they're closing their border, they're deploying troops, they're rushing things there. And how many, and all these stupid pompous experts who said that Putin would never invade Ukraine, now saying, oh no, there's no threat. Russia's too involved in Ukraine. The number of tanks deployed in the fighting in Ukraine, the tanks have disappeared. A lot of the heavy weapons have disappeared. Where are they? I know they've been moving heavy equipment out of the front with Ukraine. They've been moving that equipment to the border of NATO. Okay, so you see, just think about this for a minute, Shannon. Ukraine has become a hardened veteran force of 800,000 fighting men that the Russians can't penetrate, and they've become expert
Yeah.
at drone warfare, which NATO is not expert at. And they're
Yes.
basically killing the Russian soldiers with drones, which they got these units each. They
Amazing.
got a guy working out of his garage, and they're innovating. I mean, their
Yes.
innovations. The Ukrainians are so innovative. I mean,
That's
most
right.
of the rocket engineers and the really brilliant people. I think Andrei Sakharov was really technically Ukrainian. The most brilliant people are Ukrainians in the former Soviet Union. This is why they want Ukraine back. And they have applied that brilliance to defending their country against the Russians. So the Russians are going, all right, we can't take them head on. We'll surround them by invading Poland and the Baltic states. We'll surround them and
Okay.
cut them off. And and so what they've got, if Lee Wheelbarger's information is right, and if what we're seeing, if we're interpreting right, there could be 1 million troops built up on NATO's border. And you got what, 6.5, 7 Polish divisions and a half a dozen divisions. A division is only 12, 13,000 men in the
Yeah.
Baltic states. So you've got 12 divisions to face 40, 50 divisions, or maybe 100 divisions if they've really got 1 million men, more than 1 million
Right.
men. 100 divisions. Look, and Belarus has mobilized more than 250,000 men. I mean, yeah, these forces aren't as good as the NATO forces, of course, but NATO only has a few days of ammunition available to defend. The Russian Chinese trains are dropping off ammunition on the Polish border to the Belarusian and Russian forces have been doing it for weeks. We've tracked
Wow.
the trains. That's what they're doing.
Okay.
They've built helipads everywhere. The Russian airfields are loaded, overstacked with planes. They filled up all the bunkers on these airfields, and they're even stacking them up along the runways.
So this could be a Russian tactic to create chaos in the West and get
Well,
them diversion going while they go in after their target of Poland.
yeah, divide and conquer. Look at they're trying to divide us, American against American.
Yep.
They're trying to divide us. You just read it on Alexander Dugin's Substack. You in America, MAGA needs to unite with Russia in a world civil war.
Oh my
That
goodness.
would be suicide.
Sure.
You've got the problems in France with the government. You've got the looming potential of an uprising in Great Britain. You've got economic problems everywhere. The Japanese prime minister, as I said, resigned. You've got trouble all over and what have the Russians been doing? Naval drills with the Chinese all summer in the Pacific.
Wow.
Naval drills, all their submarines, 3 weeks ago, all their submarines in the Northern Fleet went to sea except for the ones that weren't seaworthy. They put everything they could out to sea. Why? What is about to happen? What is this all about? And you see, not only would they divide Americans against Americans, they're going to divide America from our allies in Europe, divide us from our allies in Japan and the Far East.
Yes.
And this is what we cannot have happen. We can't allow ourselves to be divided. We must be united in the face of the Russian-Chinese threat. The head of NATO said that they have intelligence that Russia and China are preparing for a long war against the West.
Oh my goodness. Of course, that's been their plan all along. The
Yes.
Chinese have stated for decades that we're going to go to war. The generals did with America.
Yeah, this has always been the inevitable thing. Lenin talked about it in 1920. And of course, what's also interesting when we look at this whole thing and we see how it's playing out, we have the French who have announced that they are building a hospital with 50,000 beds for the mass casualties that will occur when the Russians attack. And
Oh
they're
boy.
saying this has to be done by March of next year because they're expecting something in the spring. Of course, it
Okay.
could come before then because of this exercise. And they're going to set up all these triage centers. So that's a lot of expense to go to. The French are taking it serious. 50,000 beds.
I'd heard they also had told the French citizens to prepare for nuclear attack and have food and provisions. Is that true?
Yeah, throughout Europe, they started out in Poland saying, get 48 hours worth of food and water. Now it went. I think it was 2 weeks. It went up to, and they're making various excuses. They don't want to panic people, but the Danes and the Swedes are pretty clear about it. They're telling their
Okay.
citizens get ready. We've got the head of civil defense in Sweden has talked about this publicly. There's real danger of war. The civilian population. Germany's talking about creating a giant food reserve
Good
because
grief. And
they realize that. I mean, look at what could the Russian submarines do to the food imports to Europe. I mean, a lot of these
right.
countries don't have enough food grown domestically.
And we're going into the winter months again now, aren't we?
And it's look at. Do you notice that it's colder? Of course, you're living in the tropics, so you wouldn't notice. But there's grand solar minimum. And people talk about global warming. It's nonsense. Global warming it was created by the Soviets, by the communists. The same math that gave us nuclear winter, which is bogus, came out of the KGB. The same math is used to justify this idea of greenhouse gases warming the planet, that we've got to turn our cars off and we've got to stop. We got to put crapolytic converters on cows and sheep, right? Because there's too much methane going into the atmosphere. It's nonsense. The sun heats the planet. The sun is the engine that drives the planet. And what's happening is cooling. Valentina Zarkova, one of the world's leading solar scientists, has been saying for a decade, we're headed into a grand solar minimum. In 2020, she said the 25th solar cycle, which began in 2020, is the beginning of it. And it was
Wow.
only the heat sink in the oceans from 3 decades of of warming, and the warming came from the sun, not from greenhouse gases, that was keeping it at bay. But now that heat sink has released its heat for the most part, and now things are really cooling. And you saw last winter in America was harsh. You had snow in Florida. We had 11-degree temperatures here in North Carolina that caused our water main in my local town to burst
Oh boy.
because it froze. Um,
Yep.
which doesn't happen here in the South. Um, and 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 of course, this summer ended early. August. This was the first August in the history of North Carolina that we only had one day over 90 degrees.
Oh boy.
And I was walking around. It was suddenly cool the day before Labor Day. Labor Day is a hot holiday
Right.
weekend, and it is really cooled off. And
Where
I
we.
think you find this in Europe too. Fall has begun early. Fall rains have come early. I
Mhm.
think and Valentina Zarkova says it's going to get colder. The summers are going to
Yep.
get shorter. The winters are going to get harder. The springs and the falls are going to be wetter. Not everywhere because she said Alaska is going to get warmer, actually, believe it or not. There are some anomalies when you get this global cooling having to do with the currents. But we have global cooling going on. And I think the Russians and Chinese know it. That's one of the reasons they've timed the wars to begin now.
Um, if you're going to further invade Ukraine and Poland with land forces, you will need hard ground, correct? So would you not want to do it in the wintertime versus the summer where it can be kind of mud and you get stuck?
Well,
You
the
think?
summer is when the ground dries the fastest. The summer's the
Oh,
best
okay.
time, right?
Oh,
And
okay.
it's
The
still
summer is
technically it's summer. It's still summer.
okay.
Yeah, it's still summer. They're having rain in Poland and Germany right now, which could be inconvenient. One of the reasons that the Ukrainians stopped the invasion was that the Russians attacked in winter, assuming the ground was going to be frozen,
Okay.
and it was only in places it was frozen in a few places. They'd had a warmer winter, and that the ground was soft. And you probably saw some of the pictures of the
Right.
Russian heavy vehicles sinking into the mire in their invasion. This really hampered them because they had to stay on paved roads. They had trouble going on the dirt roads, because they called it Rasputista. When if you have an early spring, everything turns to a horrific mud. Everything turns into a swamp.
Any tie
Um,
in with Rasputin?
Rasputista is what it's called.
Okay.
That's the Russian word for it. But here they have a mini Rasputista. I think it's only the spring they call it that, but they have a smaller one in the fall. And you saw Hitler's troops in October of 1941 got caught in it trying to get to Moscow.
Wow.
But Napoleon got caught in it in Poland when the first time he invaded Poland. Poland also has that problem. Poland doesn't have as many paved roads in eastern Poland because it was, it was part of the Eastern Bloc for so long. So yeah, the Russians should be hampered by this, but still, it's warm. It's generally warmer, and the Russians could wait for the warm spell to do their when the ground is dry. That would be the best time to launch it, but they would just have to attack along paved roads. The other question is the use of nuclear weapons. I have a report
Yes.
from a Russian source, and I don't know that it's true. Take it for what it is. It's one report. I don't have a second source on it. That there was a meeting in November in Moscow that was chaired by Putin, the president of the Russian Federation, and it was after the Ukrainians first used the Storm Shadow missiles on Russian targets inside Russia, and they said, "All right, this is it. We have to go to war against NATO. We can't allow this. We're going to move." And Putin makes this statement in the meeting, allegedly, according to my source. He says, "We will lose 10 to 12% of the Russian population, but we'll wipe out 90% of our enemies in the West."
Wow.
This is what he supposedly said. And what does that mean? That means they're going to use nukes because Russia, unlike
Yeah.
Western Europe and America, they have fallout shelters or they have a sheltering. By the way, Russia has been deploying um, portable fallout shelter systems throughout the countryside, because they don't, mostly their cities have massive fallout and blast shelter protection under
And
all the
we've got nothing.
buildings. Yeah. And where do you see a blast or a fallout shelter near you? Right? It
They
has
were
to be,
decommissioned.
yeah. No, I mean, buildings built with federal money like, for example, libraries in a lot of universities built after what, 1963 or 4, they do have fallout shelters because you'll notice under these libraries there's a basement, but then there's a basement underneath the basement,
Okay.
and you'll see signs on the stairwell saying fallout shelter. Now I don't know if they've even taken
Oh,
those down, but they that was what they, in fact, in the UCI library, I was somewhat amused. All the books having to do with surviving nuclear war were at that bottom basement level.
really? We're down in
Yeah.
the
So
bunker.
somebody ingeniously had set it up that way. So because I was studying
Interesting.
that in graduate school, I was down at the sub basement level and going, isn't it interesting? All these books are down here. Well, of course, if you're trapped down there, getting away from the fallout, wouldn't you like to know and have those books,
Absolutely.
right?
That was smart.
Somebody in the library was thinking really, really ahead of the curve. Um, and I hope there's more of that in our libraries. I would guess that if a communist got wind of that, they would start moving all those books upstairs to the second floor where nobody could reach them, right? I mean, this is the
This looks
maliciousness. I mean, I'm being somewhat facetious, but maybe not, right? Because
this
there's
looks like
this
a
hatred of America. They want America
yep.
destroyed. There's this feeling. I've seen it. I went to school with it. People don't understand what this wokeism and the hatred for the rest of us normies is all about. But
Well, let me back you up just a minute.
yeah.
Um, I had to look the guy's name up, but his name is Yuri Bezmenov,
Oh yes, KGB officer who defected from the KGB out of India.
and there was an interview with him and the gentleman who did the creature from Jekyll Island
Oh yes, I've
back
seen
in
it.
the 80s.
Yep.
And you want to give like just a synopsis of what he revealed that they were doing to education?
Well, he said that they had a plan to demoralize us, and they wanted to get us to the state of demoralization and use disinformation and this messaging. And of course, what wokeism is and what is demoralization? Think of the word moral, and then take away what is moral and morality and morale. They have the same underlying word roots. Because a
Yes.
person who feels that they're right, that they're morally right, will stand up, and they'll stand up under pressure. I am not giving in. I am not surrendering. I am not
Yes.
backing down, right? Because you're moral and you know you're right. You have high morale.
Yes.
Napoleon said that in warfare, morale is to, physical strength what 3 is to 1. So that a demoralized army can outnumber a moral army 3 to 1 and lose,
Makes
right?
sense to me.
Right. So the key to winning World War III in advance is to demoralize the West. And you look, what is demoralizing? Having sex change operations because a 4-year-old has the fantasy that they're a girl when they're really a boy biologically, and the parents aren't even allowed to say no.
God have mercy.
Right? I mean, this has really been happening in America. You talk about
California.
demoralizing people. Yeah, look at what feminism has done to marriage, and that
Yep.
hateful rhetoric, hating men. Toxic masculinity. That's demoralizing. Oh, who are our warriors that defend our women? The men. What is a warrior? It's a masculine thing. It's not feminine. I'm sorry. I wrote against women in combat. Um,
Absolutely.
25
In the
years ago
business in
when I was
combat.
at WorldNet Daily, and I had lots of women who'd been in the military saying, I don't want to say this publicly, but you're absolutely right. Somebody else carried my pack for me. They cheated on my test scores to get me to pass. The men bent over backwards for me. You know what that would mean in combat? Where the men are busy taking care of the women who are falling apart in combat. You know
Sure.
what that means? I interviewed an American admiral, a retired 4-star admiral, former commander-in-chief of the Pacific. And he said, having women on warships, they get scared and then they get pregnant on the warship. And then what does the warship do? They lose these people. They have to be taken off the ship. It disrupts operations. It's a mess.
Yes.
That was Admiral Ace Lyons, by the way. I interviewed
It's
him
true.
He died. He passed away a few years ago. I luckily got to interview him before he died. He was very, very, I mean, this is a very brilliant man, a U.S. admiral, a four-star admiral. Um, no, this is a serious thing. But no, we have
Yep.
to put, and we have to allow homosexuals in the military. Do you realize that most of the people who want to volunteer for the military are heterosexual men who
Yep.
don't want to be in the shower naked with gay people? Because in the military, when you
Absolutely.
go to the showers, you're naked with other men.
I
Is
mean,
that
it's
what you
sick.
want? Yeah.
No, it's compromise, and it weakens our armed forces and weakens the morale. And what I'm kind of seeing here is, on one hand, you have Russia saying, you in the West are corrupt and you're pro LGBTQ and you're compromised and weak and you're spiritually weak. And I've seen Americans say, "Hey, I'm leaving America and going to Russia. They seem to be more righteous than us. They're pro-church. They're against homosexuality." But Russia would like to portray that to deceive the MAGA folks over here, basically.
Yeah, as Yuri Bezmenov would point out, it's the Russians and the communists that push the homosexual agenda. Look, the leaders of the homosexual movement in the United States are connected to the Communist Party.
Yes,
The
I meant to
leading
take it to that
feminists,
point.
yeah, the leading feminists were communists too. I mean, Gloria
And other,
Steinem, these people had communist background which they kept from the public view. We now know these people were communists. Feminism was hijacked by the communists. Okay,
so on one
it's
hand,
yeah,
Russia's saying, y'all are corrupt, uh, and they're actually the ones that are corrupting us by supporting the very organizations
yes,
that they say they're against,
yep, yeah.
whether
Be-
it be Antifa, DEI, all this stuff.
I think it was the red millionaire Willie Munzenberg who said, "Make the West stink." Right?
Okay,
Bring the worst, and this is back in the 1930s. Bring the worst things into Western culture. Make it degraded, make it degenerate, make it dirty, make it foul. And that way we can better justify the revolution. This is how they can now get the right to entertain the idea of a civil war. They've created the left, they've infiltrated it, they've poisoned our culture, and now they're cheering the right on into having a civil war with the left. When there are many people on the left that are waking up to the fact that Russia is dangerous. So what's
very
interesting is you've
dangerous.
got a number of sincere leftists who are kind of starting to catch on and go, wait a minute, Russia's evil. Russia wants to get us. And these are the people on the left we need to cultivate. And we need people on the right that say, wait a minute, this isn't just an attack from within, it's attack from without. People on the left have swallowed this poison pill. People on the right are swallowing a poison pill too. Oh, Ukraine is the most corrupt country in Europe. No, it's not. Russia is. Why? Where does this corruption that they talk about come from? Remember prohibition in the U.S., the corruption that came from making alcohol illegal. Now, I'm not saying alcohol is a good thing, but when you make something illegal, who's in charge of it? The police. And now how can you make money from it? Organized crime is organized by the police, believe it or not, because now there's a source of money and the police have charge over the criminals that are engaged in that business. And the police do what? How many people in the Chicago PD in the 1930s put their children through private schools and through good colleges because of that money? Because when Al Capone's gang
Sure.
was offloading the liquor on the beaches of Lake Michigan in the middle of the night, who was standing guard? The Chicago PD. And who had the best liquor, got the best bottle of liquor in Chicago? The mayor,
Oh my goodness.
right? Because that's the corruption. That's what happened. Now think about Russia. Now think about the corruption. And you got people like the Kennedys who got rich off of,
Sure
bootlegging.
did.
And you got the story of a lot of people getting rich off of this, off of bootlegging, they called it. And of course, we got the same thing with narcotics trafficking today. You go to Russia, it isn't just liquor that's illegal. Everything in a communist state, every economic activity is under control of the police, ultimately. And what did that do to the Soviet Union? It immediately corrupted everything so that you have a police mafia system in Russia,
Yes.
in China. Who's allied with the secret police in Russia? The Russian mafia. We know this. The Russian mafia operates in tandem with the Russian intelligence services, especially in Mexico.
Oh
Moving
my
things,
goodness.
doing what? Moving things into our border. And narco trafficking, the
Yep.
Russians are involved in that massively. And so, and in China, the triads, the criminal gangs, have signed treaties with the People's Liberation Army and the Chinese intelligence services, the Ministry of State Security. So this is a reality. People don't really understand this dimension of the problem.
We're
So
slowly being
yeah.
surrounded,
So
Sheriff.
Ukraine as corrupt as Russia? No, Ukraine was a Soviet republic. Coming out of this, they have been engaged in a process since the 2014 Euromaidan revolution of reform. And it is a long road, and they have made incredible strides. Really, because it's so difficult, corruption when it's embedded in a system. Russia? No, that is their system.
That is their
Ukraine is
system.
trying to get their freedom and get rid of the corruption.
Let me take you back for a minute to the orchestrated fall of the Soviet Union. The wall comes down. The Soviet Union breaks up. Was it known as the CIS at that time? Or was that later? There
The
was an
Commonwealth
acronym
of
C.
Independent States was formed at the time of the breakup of the Soviet Union to
Okay.
maintain a kind of military union within this former, there's 15 republics made up the Soviet Union. To keep them together militarily, they formed what was called the Commonwealth of Independent States, which still exists. But a number of the states have kind of broken away, like Ukraine and the Baltic states.
Okay.
Ukraine and the three Baltic states, that's four Soviet republics. Three of them are now in NATO. Ukraine wants to be in NATO because why? Because they don't want the boot from Moscow on their neck. People don't realize what caused the Euromaidan revolution? People will say, oh, it was the CIA. It was, Obama CIA. Obama was a friend of Moscow. You had the Uranium One deal under Obama. You had Obama, kowtowing to Putin in Moscow in his first visit there. You had him actually begging Putin for a solution to the problem in Syria, which was solved by in a bogus way. We know because when Trump got in, he had to go bomb Assad because Assad started using chemical weapons again. He didn't get rid of his chemical weapons as Putin promised Obama. It was a lie. Obama was soft on the Russians. The idea that all of these socialists, these American socialists like Obama, are suddenly anti-Russian. They all do a pirouette and they've suddenly woken up. Well, yeah, I think some have, but there's something suspicious. They're trying to escape blame for what is going to happen. I think the Russians told their communist friends in the West, the closet communists here, and they said, you got to publicly distance yourself from us. You've got to be against us. And there's evidence that this went on back in 2012 and 13. Obama got caught on the hot mic talking to President Medvedev of Russia, saying, I just need to get elected one more time, but then I can give Vladimir what he wants in the arms control treaty, right? That we're going to negotiate. And it's yes, I will tell Vladimir, President Medvedev, yeah, I will let Vladimir know. I will tell him, it was caught on the hot mic. And of course, they knew they had a problem. They had to distance themselves from Russia after that.
Why did the KGB orchestrate the supposed fall of the Soviet Union? Was it because Russia needed money and time? They were
Yes.
playing the long game? What do you think was going on?
Yeah, well, there was a defector. He was a major from the KGB named Anatoly Golitsyn, who defected in December 1961. And he had been in think tanks and meetings. He was a counterintelligence. He had been in KGB counterintelligence, that they were reorganizing the KGB to carry out a long-range deception. And he said this long-range deception would entail the fake collapsing of communism in the Soviet Union, the breakup of the Warsaw Pact, the possible fall of the Berlin Wall, and the Communist Party giving up power in Russia, but it would all be fraudulent. It would be a fake liberalization. The Communist Party would go underground and control everything from behind the scenes. He wrote this book, by the way, actually in 1983. It was published in 84. New Lies for Old. People can find this book. They can see the publication date of it. I read it when it first came out in 1984. And he predicted everything just about that happened. There were 139 falsifiable predictions, or was it 148? 148 falsifiable predictions, 139 of which had come true by 1994. This is a
Wow.
93 point something percent, almost 94% of his predictions came true. What did he predict? He predicted that the Berlin Wall might be taken down, that the Warsaw Pact alliance would be torn down, that the communists would give up power in Russia, and so on, and that a liberal was going to come to power, a liberal communist was going to come to power in Moscow. That was a year before Gorbachev came to power, who brought the
Yes.
liberalization. I mean, like I say, this is not an accident that Golitsyn knew these things in advance, and he wasn't the only one. Zaslav Bittman talked about this long-range deception plan. He worked under the head of disinformation for the KGB, General Egines. You had Jan Shena, the highest political level defector, a Czech protege of Khrushchev, who defected in 1968. He wrote a book in 1982 called We Will Bury You. He said they were planning the fake collapse of the Warsaw Pact alliance.
Wow.
So
So they
it
literally.
isn't just one guy who said it. A bunch of them said there was this plan, and then it happens. You have
Mm,
to say that there's no doubt, and this is why I've been on this for almost 40 years. You can say without doubt that this is what they've done. And like I say, I've got KGB officers saying that he was told this by Shabarshin, Leonid Shabarshin, the head of the KGB, at the time of the fall of the Soviet Union, that it was done to infiltrate us economically, to get our technology, but to get into our political process, to get communists. I mean, look, you look at Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. Who gets elected president right after the fall of the Soviet Union? A guy with a lot of communist connections who went to Moscow during the Cold War, who had been working for a KGB front organization, a peace group in the UK, protesting against the Vietnam War. Bill Clinton.
Bill Clinton.
And but something funny happened on the way to Soviet victory. They thought if they could put their fellow communists in power in the United States, in the White House, in Germany, in Great Britain, in France, if they could put these friendly faces into power, that they
Yes.
could then get control of Europe. And they were wrong. Because what happened in 1999, and I'm sure this wasn't the first asking, this was declassified out of the Clinton archive in 2018. It was the transcript of the last meeting between Bill Clinton and Boris Yeltsin. And it's an incredible thing. Go to the Clinton Library. You can download all the
Okay.
documents of his meetings. In that meeting, Boris Yeltsin, he's not drunk. He's not cracking jokes. Boris Yeltsin says, Bill, I still believe in you. But we need one thing from you. Give Europe to Russia. We are
Wow.
Europeans. Europe is next to us. We should be the ones defending it, not you. Go home. Defend those countries over there. We'll control these countries over here. Boris Yeltsin, who appointed Vladimir Putin to be his successor. And he even told Bill Clinton, well, you won't agree to this, so there's a new sheriff in town. I'm going to be resigning, and this young man, Vladimir Putin, is going to take over, and it's going to be a new sheriff in town.
How long
Because
has Putin been in control now? Long time.
more than 25 years now, he became prime
Right.
minister on August of 1999. And then when Boris Yeltsin
Yeah.
resigned at the end of 1999, he was appointed president because in their line of succession, the prime minister becomes president. The first prime minister becomes president when the president resigns. And then they had an election. I think it was in March of 2000. He then had his first term as president. And he's
Yes.
been basically president, or he had his puppet Medvedev president when they had a constitutional limitation. They removed the constitutional limitation. He has been in power for more than 25 years, Vladimir Putin.
Dictator.
Yeah, these elections aren't real. By the way, nobody wins elections for 25 years. Same thing with Lukashenko in Belarusia. This guy is a Stalinist.
And now, of course, Maduro. And then, as we mentioned, Ortega in Nicaragua and
Yeah.
Xi in China.
These guys cannot lose elections. They're
Nope.
communists. They're dictators. They can't lose. Their party is in control. They represent their party, and there is no real political process there. If you are against them, you will be arrested or you will be offed and killed. The same process
Yep.
is underway, by the way, in Brazil under Lula. Lula, the Workers' Party in Brazil is just a under it's a disguised left of center party. It's really a communist party. Lula is a communist. And now
Yes.
they are been arresting people in Brazil. And look, they just convicted Bolsonaro, the former president, on false charges, 27 years, or is it
Oh man.
27 and a half years? They gave him in as a
Right.
sentence, 27 years and so many months. I mean, Bolsonaro is older than I am. Bolsonaro's got to be close to 70 years old.
And
He's
Lula.
not, yeah, I think he's 3 years older than I am. That would make him 70, turning 70 this year. He's never going to, unless he lives to be 100, he's never going to get out of prison.
Lula was a criminal, wasn't
Yeah, Lula was convicted on corruption righteously, and this Supreme Court and this justice ministry that's controlled by communist agents in Brazil let him out and let him run for president again. And that election, there was fraud in that Brazilian election.
he? For
Bolsonaro couldn't
sure.
have lost that election. No
Oh,
way.
this is sickening. And hasn't India recently been over there carousing with Putin and
Oh, yeah.
Xi?
Well, India traditionally, although it was technically a non aligned country and it's not a communist country, because they had been a colony of Britain, they had a bad taste in their mouth from British colonialism, and they saw the West. They weren't as negative to America, but very much to the English, to the British.
Sure.
So they decided they wanted to buy their weapons from the Soviet Union. And they began later. I mean, when Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated, I have a strong suspicion he wanted to move towards an alliance with the U.S. He wanted to get away from Russia, and I suspect that's the reason he was assassinated. I think that's maybe the reason Indira Gandhi was assassinated. I think there has been an understanding. Some Indian politicians have understood that India is a natural ally of the United States, not Russia. And but this movement of India towards the U.S. and that Trump is very popular in India. The Russians have fought really hard against it, and they brought India into this BRICS alliance. It's Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and now they've added South Africa because
South
they
Africa.
took over through the ANC, which is just a front for the Communist Party of South Africa. Um, this is what they formed a counter bloc. That they're and of course, if Lula can consolidate his hold on Brazil, Brazil is the largest Catholic country in the world. It's the second largest country in population, and I think maybe in land area in in the Americas. Maybe the U.S. and Canada are larger. Canada doesn't count because most of its land is just empty Arctic, nothing.
Agricultural exports and
Yes,
palm oil and everything.
yes, very big agricultural, and China wants that ag because if China goes into conflict with the U.S., where are they going to get the food to replace the food they import from us? Because China can't feed
Right.
itself. They have too many people, not enough
Brazil.
arable land.
We're live with Jeff Nyquist. If you're just joining us here in a moment, we want to talk about the topic of UFOs. But let me ask you this, Jeff. With all that you know and have analyzed, what do you think could be a possible scenario? What's your prediction happens next on the world scene? You
Yeah,
think Russia's going to move for Poland, as we've been
ne-
talking
ne-
about?
yeah, never make predictions, especially about the future. So I'm going to preface this, which it's very hazardous to make predictions. But given this exercise, I think the Russians are applying serious pressure on NATO because they want to force Trump to say he won't defend the Baltic states, that the Baltic
Okay.
states should never have been allowed in NATO, that they are Russian territory. They're trying to threaten nuclear war to get this admission. And if and I think Trump is being pressured by people around him, people like Vice President Vance, who is very much on this same page. These are people who think wrongly, who don't really understand international politics, who are telling the president that we shouldn't defend the Baltic states, we should be out of NATO. But if the president says, well, we're not leaving NATO, but we're not going to defend the Baltic states, it's going to undermine NATO and empower Russia massively. Because then it will be the green light for Russia to annex the Baltic states, which will shake NATO to its foundations. Different
Okay.
countries might break out of NATO and say, look, we want to sign a separate peace with Russia because we're not going to be defended by the US. We don't believe the US guarantee. We have no more
Okay.
nuclear umbrella. We're not protected. We might as well, get the best surrender terms we can get. This is what I think the Russians are hoping to do. Now, I don't think that they will succeed. I see that amazingly, Europe is hardening in its attitude and countries are moving to the right. Britain is a strange case. That's a real problematic case. I think Germany, of course, you have a coalition government, but the chancellor is a Christian Democrat. He is on the right of center. You have Poland, the election of the Polish president. He's very strong, a conservative guy. You have the Scandinavian countries very much united and opposed to Russia and moving away from this whole letting immigrants just come in and do anything. So there's a correction going on in Europe.
Yeah.
And so it would be a great shame if they could, by applying this pressure, get Putin to do this. And I think the Polish military may have realized the mistake of they had pulled back 16 kilometers, their forces from the border. Now they're lining up on the border. Why? Because if the border's open, the Russians could move into what's called the Savaki Gap. It's an area of the border of Lithuania and Poland, and the Russians have an enclave. They have a piece of territory called Kaliningrad. It's on the Baltic. It's in between Poland and Lithuania, and they've pumped 100,000 troops into this enclave. They've been
Wow.
building it up for several months. They've been flying in troops, flying in in pieces, road mobile SS-27 ICBMs. I've seen the pictures, the satellite pictures
Oh
of them.
boy.
They've been moving nuclear weapons into there. And Poland is thinking, I think they're thinking, no, we can't let them just go in and occupy. It has to be a fight because they realize if Russia does this, the pressure on Trump within MAGA might be because you got people like Marjorie Taylor Greene who are frankly just not very smart, right? And Vice President Vance, I don't think he's understanding this at all. You've
Right.
got the Dark
I agree.
Enlightenment movement. You've got Peter Thiel and those people, those Silicon Valley
Oh my
people.
goodness.
I think there's a confusion. Elon Musk says some things that are good, and then he misunderstands other things. He's just not, these businessmen. They're
Yeah.
monomaniacs about their business. They know about their business and what they're doing, but they don't understand this international politics stuff.
Right.
And so they're subject to being influenced, to being manipulated. And I think there's this manipulation campaign. You can see it. Alexander Dugin is one of the prime manipulators of the right wing in the West and in the third world, to be honest. I think there's this danger. If Russia can commit an act of aggression that doesn't lead directly to war, if they can occupy the Savaki Gap without a combat action,
Yes.
without they make it kind of ambiguous, so that that suddenly we're confronted with the decision of we really don't. The West does not want a war with Russia. We don't. The idea that we're trying to destroy Russia, it's crazy. Russia's nuclear power. That would be crazy to
Right.
provoke a nuclear war. That's why these Russian claims that we're threatened, this is awful. No, Russia's the one that's been building up nuclear weapons and missiles. We haven't built a new nuclear missile or weapon for 35 years, for 34 years, the last time we even tested a nuclear weapon. Our nuclear arsenal is in questionable shape.
Yes.
We only have virtual testing. I know that this summer we were supposedly to test one. I don't think that test came off yet, or maybe it failed and they're keeping it secret. I don't know what the story is there, but it's scary to think what they have succeeded in their deception of the collapse of the Soviet Union to get us to disarm. Europe is largely disarmed. They don't have enough ammo plants. They don't, the idea that NATO's an aggressive alliance. Why don't they have enough ammo if they're aggressive alliance? Why aren't their military
Exactly.
establishments are in such weak, shabby condition? Because we believed in peace. We thought we were going to live in peace with the Russians from now on. But all
That's
these
right.
people in Eastern Europe, they knew better. In Ukraine, they revolted. As soon as the Baltic states got their freedom, they got away. They wanted the protections of NATO because what? They're scared of the Russians. Why are they scared? Oh, we can see they have good reason. All the Ukrainian cities knocked down. Mariupol, 90% destroyed. That is a
How many Ukrainians?
Russian-speaking Ukrainian city, and the Russians destroyed
Yeah.
it. Artillery
How many
bombardment.
how many Ukrainians were starved to death back during Stalin? 30 million?
No,
40
it
million?
was 7 to 11 million. Some people say it's higher, but I think it's more around 7 to 11 million Ukrainians starved to death in the terror famine. Um, it's There's a book Robert Conquest wrote about this. If people are interested, you can get it on Amazon. It's
Okay.
brilliantly written. It's called The Harvest of Sorrow.
Oh,
It's all about that. I mean,
the
it was
harvest of sorrow.
largely covered up by the Western press, by newspapers like the New York Times. Covered it up at the time. Said, no,
Yes.
the people are going hungry, but nobody's starving to death. It was nonsense. Robert Conquest basically broke that out, and we know that this really happened. And of course, the Russians today are going to deny it. But look what they're doing to the Ukrainians now. Why? Because the Ukrainian people have always had this sense of independence. Stalin needed to stomp on them. He needed to trample them down because
Yes.
they were always the Achilles heel of the Soviet Union, and they are today. You can see them fighting desperately for their freedom. And this should have the greatest sympathy with us. But of course, I agree with people who say, well, just because we're sympathetic, we shouldn't send American troops. They can fight on their own, but we should help them. Why? Because it's in our interest. Because their enemy is our enemy. The Russian missiles are pointed at us.
Yes.
The Chinese are allied with them, and the Chinese missiles are pointed at us. We need as many allies as we can get, because why? We do not have the Russian, North Korean, and Chinese submarine forces outnumber us 3-1.
Wow.
And the submarine is the most important naval combatant now, because if you can
Yes.
see it on the ocean, you can send a missile and destroy it like that,
Don't
right?
forget the underwater drones now that they've got.
Oh, yes.
And
Underwater drones, including the
these,
tsunami bomb drone, which is a
uh-oh.
Russian terror weapon, a 200 megaton bomb, allegedly, in a drone dispatched from a submarine that could create a giant wall of water that could wave over Great Britain and drown everybody in Great Britain.
Good grief.
Water is one
And
of the
don't
most destructive forces on Earth.
tell me about it. We had some flash floods here in Bali a
Hmm.
few days ago, and I didn't get out for 2 days. I was busy on some projects, but when I did, I noticed all this debris
Hmm.
in the driveways here. And I said, what is this? Did a truck doing construction tip over? There was brick and all kinds of sediment and gravel. And then I looked at the drainage systems they have here, and it was just rubble in there. Well, I took this scooter taxi, went up to another part of town, and there were people that had been flooded out so bad, they pulled their mattresses out. They had stuff stacked up in mounds outside their homes. It was horrible. I mean, it
Yeah,
just came so quick. Now, that was just rain. Can you
yeah.
imagine a weapon to create mammoth tsunamis and tidal waves? We're live with Jeff Nyquist. Jeff, I want to take a 5-minute coffee break, get refill, and I want you to come back and talk about the UFO research you're doing.
All
Um,
right.
but before we do, how can people follow your work? Give out your contact information.
jrnyquist.blog, jrnyquist.blog, and my Amazon page where I have several books you can find. Um, and that's where you can find me.
Okay, just stay connected. We'll take a 5-minute break, Jeff. Grab something to drink. Bathroom break, folks.
Calling a
And we'll be
ravenous
back.
bird from the east, the man that executeth my counsel from a far country. Yes, I have spoken it. I will also bring it to pass. I have purposed it. I will also do it. You are listening to Mega Man with Shannon Ray Davis. Jesus Christ is Lord, and no demon is safe. is safe. Listening to a Mega Man with Shannon Ray Davis. Jesus Christ is Lord, and no demon is safe.
All right, everybody, and we are coming back. Here we go. Stand by. Okay, welcome aboard. This is part 2 with our special guest, Jeff Nyquist. You can find more of his research, follow his most recent work by going to jrnyquist.blog. And Jeff, welcome back. By the way, are you working on a new book?
Yeah, I've been working on it for a while, and it's incredibly complicated, and it's taking me a lot longer than I thought because the research is just, this subject is so vast. UFOs are what they are now calling UAPs. And we've had testimony this week in Congress. Representative Eric Burleson presented video footage of a October 2024 attempt to attack a UFO by a U.S. drone. You got the drone footage of this UFO flying over the ocean. This is near Yemen and in the Middle East. And this thing is flying over the sea. You can see the waves. And it fires a Hellfire missile at this UFO. And the Hellfire missile bounces off of it.
Wow. And
you see this plasma-like, liquid-like stuff coming off the UFO. It almost looks like bubbles of gas or bubbles of liquid coming off the UFO. And then you see the UFO. It wiggles a little bit, but it just keeps going straight. And you're just watching this thing. It took a direct hit from a Hellfire missile.
Oh, my goodness.
And this was shown to Congress before a congressional committee. Burleson was not running the committee. He was testifying before the committee. This is Congresswoman Paulina Luna's committee or subcommittee. They'd been looking into this. They had a couple years back testimony from David Grush, a military intelligence officer, Air Force officer, who publicly stated that there was a UFO retrieval program, that we were reverse engineering technology from captured UFOs, that they were non-human biologics. He used the word biologics recovered from these crashes. And then when Paulina Luna basically asked him, were these alien bodies? He basically responded, well, we don't use the word alien, we say non-human. Because then he said there's this idea of them being interdimensional, right? Not from another planet, but from another dimension of reality. What is this other dimension of reality? But now Congresswoman Luna went on Joe Rogan talking about what her committee was revealed in camera, things that she could talk about. And she said, I can't say, so much of it was classified. I can't say what was told to us. But I can say this, that these beings are interdimensional, not extraterrestrial. She says this in the Joe Rogan. People can go look at the Joe Rogan interview. Now, that's really interesting because the leading ufologist, Jacques Vallée, who has studied UFOs since 1959, 1960, I think his first book was Enigma to Science in 59, and then Anatomy of a Phenomenon in 1960. So he's in his 80s now, still alive, still going strong. And he wrote a book in the 90s, which was kind of his first stab at a theory, a general theory about UFOs, UAPs. And the book was titled Dimensions. That was the book, Dimensions, saying the evidence does not point to them being extraterrestrial. And of course, you see in all these news stories, they refer to this UFO that got hit by the Hellfire missile as a spaceship. They say it's definitely proof it's from an alien world. People jump to this conclusion. But Vallée says if you study the evidence, and he had at that point studied it for more than 30 years, he said, this is interdimensional. This is from a different reality. And this is fascinating because if you go back to Thomas Aquinas, and now they're publishing this, I think it's the Summa Theologica. It was a work that he made. There's a part of it that's now published under the title on Amazon of Evil. And it's his discussion about demons. And there's a fascinating part in this book if you read it. It's very much worth reading because he's going to all the most advanced minds going back to antiquity, what they had to say about demonic entities.
Really?
Yes. And he said that there's an argument about whether they have bodies, physical bodies. And of course, the term daimonic from the Greek, D-I-A-M-O-N-I-C, is where we get the word demonic. But originally the conception was it included both angels and demons. Of course, the scriptures, what we understand is that demons are angels that have, broken away from God, right? Michael and his angels fought the devil and a third of the stars fell from heaven. What is this? Revelation 12. This is an interesting thing because Thomas Aquinas cites a number of very advanced thinkers from the ancient and medieval world that believed that these things had bodies. And of course, you've got Lot entertaining angels unaware, right?
That's right.
So the angels are having dinner at Lot's house, and the mob outside wants basically to have sex with them or rape them. They're
That's right.
demanding, Lot offers one of his daughters and says, no, you can't. These are special guests. But it's to make the crowd go away. It's you have this issue that if these things are physically real, if angels are now, Thomas Aquinas comes down on the side saying no, demons don't have physical bodies. But I think what we may discover with this UFO phenomenon is that these beings are from the demonic realm, another dimension of reality, and that they can physically manifest.
Yes.
You have the ufologist John A. Keel, who wrote in the book Why UFOs, Operation Trojan Horse. He said that demonology is not just another crackpotology. And he talks about the word transmogrification. When something from this demonic realm manifests, becomes a solid thing, and you have the smell of rotten eggs, he points out. You have this,
right.
Like sulfuric acid. You have this smell. And it is in some of these UFO manifestations and some of these occult manifestations, you have this. So, and of course, Vallée says these beings, these UFOs are a kind of technology, but they're not a technology strictly as we understand it because it's coming from another dimension. And it has a spiritual aspect to it. Vallée, the scientist, admits this freely. Right?
I believe that's what we're dealing with. Now, I mean, I know we have advanced technology and some things that have been cited out there are probably the next generation military hardware. but not when you're talking about these kind of things that you see here, or the incredible speeds that some of these things have been reported to be flying at.
Well, as
As
Valley points out, UFOs go faster than the speed of sound without creating a sonic boom. How is that
amazing.
possible? Right?
Oh, good point.
How does
Good
it
point.
take a Hellfire missile, a direct hit from a Hellfire missile and keep on going?
Right?
They're known to disappear, which they could be going invisible, but they can
Okay.
go from and they've been tracked on radar. They can go from being just floating, still in space, to Mach 10 or 20 in a matter of seconds. You and I would be,
Good grief.
we would splatter the sides of the walls of that thing just from the G force. It would just
Yes.
crush us. Those G forces would flatten us like we'd fallen from the Empire State Building and hit the cement. That is what those G forces would be. And yet these things do that all the time, right? How do you explain it? So if things can pass between dimensions, whatever the other dimension is. Now, here's another spooky thing, and you can go to, there's people called abductees, people who have
Okay.
been taken aboard these craft, people like Whitley Strieber, who famously, he sounds crazy, right? But he's really a rather rational person reporting on this. He's
Yes.
reporting his experience. He's one of many people. There was the late Carlo Turner, who wrote a very frightening book called Masquerade of Angels, which is about one of these a person who was involved in the occult, had some psychic powers, and was plagued with these entities who basically raped him, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's a horrifying story. And this is what demons are known for, right?
That's right.
The demonological aspect, Masquerade of Angels. So, but here's the scary thing that these people report. There's two things that are scary about it. One of those things is that they report visions of a future nuclear holocaust on the earth. It's in Carlo Turner's book. It's in Whitley Strieber has a vision in his first book on his abduction experience. And the other part of the abduction experience is that they find that there are dead people, dead relatives of people on these UFOs, even reports of abductions in Russia.
Really?
There's a famous one. The guy said, well, this friend I knew, he was on the UFO and he'd been dead for years. So where is this dimension where these beings appear from and you can see dead people on the UFOs? How do you explain this? This is
Good
part of the
point.
phenomenon. You can say, look, a lot of the people who believe in nuts and bolts craft that are from another planet need to explain. You can't just say, well, this thing the witness says is absurd and so I'll omit it and say they're spacecraft from another planet. You have to take, as Valley points out, all the witness testimony. You have to look at the whole thing. And the whole thing is pointing to something more disturbing than people from outer space.
I believe there's no question it's supernatural. It's demonic forces coming through the veil and
Well, it
making
could be
themselves known.
there could be angels too. There could be, there could be
True.
good and bad, right?
True.
You have at Fatima, you have this miracle of the sun that happened on October 13th, 1917, where you had 70,000 witnesses. You had I think it was a cavalry regiment from the Portuguese army sent to maintain order, because every month these shepherd children, very interesting, saw a lady in a tree. Now, was it an angel or the Virgin Mary? The Catholic Church says it was the Virgin Mary, maybe, that told them that it would come back every month, and there will be miracles and there will be prophecies. And the final event was when these crowds had grown to this enormous size, and it was reported in, you can look at newspapers from that time,
Yes.
on a microfilm, and the Catholic Church investigated it. Scientists like Valley have investigated it. They saw, guess what? Classic flying saucer, a silver disc was seen.
Wow.
And so, but there was prophecies given out, and this is very controversial. within the Catholic Church, because there was secret prophecies and there was an open prophecy. The open prophecy said that Russia, and notice the date, this happens in October 1917. What happens in October, Eastern calendar of that
Oh,
year? The Bolshevik Revolution.
revolution. Right.
Communism begins its advance under Lenin. And so this comes in, the warning is, the world needs to repent. And until they repent, there's going to be wars. And it predicted World War II. And it said then there will be a worse war after World War II that will destroy many nations. And you have to consecrate Russia. You have to bring Russia back to God, because if you don't, Russia will spread its errors throughout the world and many nations will be destroyed. Right?
Well, I think there's a definite tie into communism then.
Yes.
My friend Terry Cook always said communism is Satanism in disguise.
Yes. And
Now, was
so,
Karl Marx a Satanist?
well, the book by Richard Wurmbrand, and I don't think he was a Satanist in the sense that he worshiped the devil, but he was a Satanist in the sense that he was against everything having to do with God and Jesus and traditional faith. And he hated
Yes.
it. He called religion the opiate of the masses, the opiate of the people. He was Jewish, but he was raised as a Christian. His
Really?
mother
Really?
converted, I think, first, then his father converted, as I understand. And then so he was brought up in a Christian home, and he
Wow.
hated it. Yeah, he came to hate it. He was actually, when he was a teenager, at one point he was devout, but he ended up hating it and rebelling against it. And his favorite character from German literature was Mephistopheles,
Oh boy.
who was the one in the story of Faust who tempted Faust to make a deal with the devil, right? Which is the famous poem. And it's very interesting that Goethe was a Hegelian, a young Hegelian, who basically made up his own dialectic, took Hegel in a different direction. And there's definite evidence. There's a book, and I had it here a minute ago, about Hegel. I've got it over here. I think the title is Hegel and Hermeticism or something like that. And it's written by a guy named McGee. And it was the philosopher Eric Voegelin who first accused Hegel of being a magician, of being a sorcerer,
Really?
and said that he was influenced by the occult, by Hermeticism, by these things, and that Hegel's philosophy was a disguised form of magic. And this is what Alexander Dugin is all about, by the way, because he's using the same kind of techniques. And so when you go into, was Karl Marx a Satanist? He was a Hegelian. And Hegel came from that part of Germany that was steeped in the occult, steeped in mysticism. And so McGee basically proves, because Voegelin only asserted it and said that he was a magician and he was doing very bad things. McGee shows what he was doing. And what is bad about this is that the idea in this Gnostic Hermeticism, and Voegelin said it's basically Gnosticism, what communism was, what all these modern Nazism is Gnosticism. Why? Because man is saved by his own efforts, by knowledge, right? Gnosticism is about salvation through knowledge and through human access to knowledge, that we all have the truth within us. We only have to meditate or access it, right? Well, what is it? The demonic voices you're hearing, right? You've got people like Jerry Marzinski, the psychologist, who says with schizophrenics, the voices they're hearing are evil entities. That he's proved
right.
it, and they're curing schizophrenics, paranoid schizophrenics who hear voices, by actually taking the voices seriously and getting them to get rid of the voices, right? Through a
Wow.
process, through
Okay.
recognizing their evil. Look, and there was a psychiatrist in California at Mendocino Mental Hospital there named Van Dusen who pioneered this. He went back to the Christian mystic Emanuel Swedenborg, who was a famous Swedish scientist and engineer in the 1700s, who, when he was 53 years old, had a spiritual epiphany, spoke to angels and to dead people, and encountered evil spirits and started to analyze them scientifically. And Van
Wow.
Dusen took this literature seriously, and he said, "Wait a minute, these, but what is modern materialistic science say? Oh no, these voices are delusions. Just dope them up with drugs. So the voices, blot out the voices with drugs. Well, that just makes the people worse. It
Right.
doesn't address the underlying problem. It's just treating the symptom." And what
For
Van
sure.
Dusen and Marzinski said was, you got to talk to the voices. And what's interesting, Marzinski relates the experience, and Van Dusen is when they start to talk to the people about their voices and what their voices are telling them. It's interesting. You talked about demoralization and what the Soviets were doing. You're talking about um, Yuri Bezmenov saying
Yes, sir.
demoralization. These voices in the heads of paranoid schizophrenics are demoralizing the person. They're telling them how bad they are, that everything's negative. They're filling them with fear and negative thoughts. This is what these
Yes.
voices do. This is what Manuel Swedenborg said. These voices are demonic. They're evil. They will demoralize you. And this is what Van Dusen and Marzinski discovered. They had to get the patients were in a state of demoralization. What does demoralization do? It weakens them and makes them open to these demonic entities to possess them and to steal
Yes.
all their energy. And he said one of the symptoms of paranoid schizophrenia is they go through periods of exhaustion. The
Wow.
demon is stealing their energy, is robbing them.
Yes.
And so the road to recovery is to acknowledge these are evil spirits. Recognize it. Isn't that interesting?
Man, this is deliverance
Yes. And
teaching.
and so you see it on a big, so if the Soviet Union as a political complex creates a disinformation mechanism working on the same principles, whether they're doing this consciously or unconsciously, that demonic possession that evil entities use in possession,
Yes.
where is this coming from? What is going on inside Lenin's brain, in Marx's brain? Are they hear do they hear the voices too? you know?
This is satanic. There's a definite tie-in with the
Yeah.
demons, demoralization, communism,
You don't have to
and
be a
destruction.
Satanist. You don't have to be a Satanist to be possessed, right?
Right.
So was Karl Marx a Satanist?
Man.
Well, in a sense, but I don't think he worshipped Satan. I think there is a satanic influence over him and over the communist movement, to be frank.
Oh my goodness. So if we want to go all the way up the chain, this is Satan and his demonic host.
Well, it's
Um,
interesting. The Carl Jung, the psychologist who had dabbled in the occult and paganism, towards the end of his life, he said people got to go back to Christianity. He says this in a book called The Undiscovered Self, written the last full
that's right.
book I think he wrote himself. And he said in different writings um, towards the end of his life that there was an antichrist force in history. And he could see it building up from the Renaissance through the Enlightenment and the French Revolution and the Bolshevik Revolution and of course, the Nazi movement. And he said that the communist movement is the concentrated, updated form of the Antichrist movement in history.
Wow.
An interesting observation. And he gave a definition of Antichrist, which I find useful. He said, well, what is Antichrist? He said, Antichrist is something or someone that promises the same thing that Christ promises: peace on earth, goodwill towards men, prosperity, the millennial reign, right? They
Yes,
promise
sir.
this on earth, but they deliver the exact opposite.
Okay.
And their principles are actually the exact opposite, right? They're going to do this through murder and revolution. Like the murder that we saw. You can bet that the guy that shot Charlie Kirk the other day
Yes.
was under the influence of these same ideas.
Absolutely. And demonic forces is at the root. Um, you mentioned Antichrist. That's very interesting um, because it sparked a memory. I want to show you something on the screen here. Let me
Okay.
share this screen here. So, you're familiar with Peter Thiel?
Oh yes, yes, he's part of this.
Palantir.
Yep, Palantir.
So Tucker Carlson's been doing a lot of interviews, as has Sean Ryan with exorcists, ministers, and he's in case of Tucker Carlson has talked about his own experiences encountering demons,
Mm-hmm.
and he's sold on the fact that there are paranormal forces at work. So it's getting into the mainstream. Well, what the heck is going on here? I heard an announcement that Peter Thiel is going to do a 4-part lecture series on the Antichrist. Now,
Mm.
this is the ticket, includes all 4 events. It's going to be on the September 15th, so this week, 22nd, 29th, and 6th. I don't know what his background is to make him qualified to talk about the Bible and Antichrist, but I will tell you, this guy's spooky
He's a
because,
libertarian who is part of this. I think he's part of this dark enlightenment. It's. I think it's the negative influences around J.D. Vance that have
yes,
permeated into Trump, and I fear the worst because look, the guy behind this is a guy named Curtis Yarvin, who published essays under the name Mencius Moldbug. Now that
really,
sounds
what's
something out
that?
of the Screw Tape letters, right?
Okay,
Mencius
yeah.
Moldbug would be a Screw Tape's cousin, right?
Hmm.
My dear Wormwood. You could just see Mencius Moldbug, my dear Wormwood, my dear Screw Tape. I mean, this is the way it sounds. And so Curtis Yarvin wrote this thing, and it's like there's satanic inversion. You can, when you invert things, men become women, women become men, the poor become
Right.
the rich become the poor. You see it all throughout communism, all throughout Marxism, and of course with wokeism. All of these movements, satanic movements, involve inversion. You could call it satanic inversion or perversion. This is something essential to the demonic realm. And so, what's interesting, what Yarvin does is, of course, he's feeding into the dissatisfaction of conservatives, of right wing people, that their countries are being subverted, their borders are being dropped, the natural formation of the nation is being torn apart. The leftists are controlling the universities, all legitimate, things we worry about. But what he's done is he's inverted the whole narrative. What he says is, he says, "Oh no, Russia isn't the communist country. China is not the communist country. The primary communist country is America. America is the homeland of socialism, communism, and we have to oppose this Americanism." And of course, America is an Enlightenment country, right? Because the founding fathers got their ideas of freedom out of the Enlightenment, which the Enlightenment was a reaction against the wars of religion, really, where Protestants and Catholics were murdering each other, killing each other at the stake, arguing over theology, and people just had enough of it. And they said, "Look, this is why in the Constitution you have separation of church and state." It's not really the proper term, but yeah, Congress shall make no religion. We're not going to have an official religion in America. That doesn't mean that we're anti-Christian, but it meant that we don't want the wars of enlightenment here. We didn't want, you had civil wars in France, civil war in Germany called the 30 Years' War, where huge numbers of people were killed and places burned and looting and armies going back and forth. They were tired of it. So the Enlightenment was sort of, we agree to disagree about theology. So there's what? Thousands of different Protestant denominations. You have the Catholic Church, which itself is breaking apart, as they're they're arguing about their last pope, and Vatican II. So you have this Christianity in a kind of crisis. But what does Curtis Yarvin do? He calls it the Dark Enlightenment, and he says the Enlightenment was bad. That he wants these wars of religion to stop. Protestantism is evil, right? And he's basically appealing to Catholics, and it's a divide and conquer, divide Christians. It's a game, right?
Yes.
So what is,
Yes.
I would guess, I don't know what Peter Thiel is going to say, but if he's under Curtis Yarvin's influence, and I think he's been a Yarvinite, I could be wrong, but it's my impression, he's going to say something along these lines that's going to be divisive of Christians and maybe anti-Protestant. We'll see.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Now he's the guy who has. If I've got the. Okay, wait a minute. Let's see. There's Peter Thiel. He's Palantir. Is that right? The
He's
defense
part of the money
contractor.
behind it. Yeah, and of course they're trying to become a premier defense contractor. And I think these tech billionaires and I think Elon Musk is connected to these groups.
And
Um,
the information agency that he has.
well, yeah, Palantir deals with advanced, I think, information systems is part of what
Yes.
it does.
Basically, you've got him. You've got Sam Altman. Okay, in Stargate.
Hmm.
You've got the head of Oracle, who's partnering, putting, I guess, billions of dollars into this AI campaign. You have all these defense contractors, these young guys creating all this advanced military technology. Who's the other guy? I wrote his name down the other day. Stand by here a second. Okay, there's a guy named Lucky. Okay, here we go. Peter Thiel, Sam Altman, Palmer Luckey, Larry Ellison, that's Oracle, Stargate, Colossus, Palantir. Palmer Luckey's company is called Anduril. I believe what they're doing is they're building the brain of the beast.
Well,
Um,
there's transhumanism caught up in this, and there's the idea that Elon Musk has that we're going to put chips in our brains, and there's the ultimate idea that we're going to transfer our consciousness into machines, right? And we
absolutely.
can live forever. You heard the open mic between the two dictators, Putin and Xi. There was Putin and Xi, President Xi of China, when they had the parade. The open mic was something like Xi saying, well, I'm going to I'm going to live 500 years. I'm going to make it so I can live 500 years. This is what and this is right out of Gnosticism. This is the idea that man can make these changes. God limited the lifespan of human beings. We're created. We live our 80, average or whatever it is, and then our bodies. When you get to 70, your body starts changing, and that's when you start ending. We know this the numbers here. The body just starts to fall apart slowly after that age, and that's a given. They want to change these God-given aspects of human life because they have decided in their wisdom that they want to live forever or 500 years. I mean, you think about how monstrous this is. You think about Mary Shelley's Dr. Frankenstein,
Right.
right? What kind of monster are you creating when you're putting chips in people's brains and you're combining them with machines? At what point is that no longer a human being? And what about the demonic influence? Can demonic entities influence these machines through their quantum processors?
Very good question. Some believe that the demons are coming through the portal of these AI platforms already.
I've heard this, and I wouldn't discount it. If demons can manifest, or other interdimensional entities or intelligences, John A. Keel called them the intelligent electromagnetic spectrum. If they can manifest or transmogrify, they could affect machines. You put machines in charge of things, and do you end up with something like Skynet out of the
Right.
science fiction, movie? What was that movie called that Arnold Schwarzenegger was
Um,
in?
Terminator
Terminator.
2, I think.
Right, Terminator. Well, you notice it's interesting that the director of that movie, they take right out of the book of Revelation that whole general theme,
Really?
because, yeah, it's from Revelation chapter 12. Again, what we talked about before. If you look at
Okay.
that movie, you have in Revelation chapter 12, there's the woman who is going to give birth to the man child, and she's
Yes.
hidden away in the earth because the dragon is trying to devour her before she can give birth to her child. That's the story of Terminator, the first Terminator movie. And they even
Well,
have
yeah.
symbolism.
Yeah.
The Eve
Right.
symbolism is there because Sarah Connor there's like a lizard, there's a reptile in her apartment that her roommate has. So there's that even the serpent thing going on in there. So it's there's all
Right.
this, there's all this, and Sarah is what? Abraham's wife's name, right?
Oh,
Well, you've
that's
got, and then who is John Connor is her son, who's going to save humanity from the evil machine. John
yeah.
Connor, JC, Jesus Christ.
Oh my goodness.
See, people don't even realize what's being put into movies. So
Right.
the director, what Cameron is his name, he takes Revelation 12, he does science fictions it up, and he creates this series of movies, the Terminator movies. And it's all right out of Revelation 12, because in Revelation 12, the woman that's going to give birth to the man child is hidden away in the earth, and the dragon's trying to find her and devour her for
Yes.
342 days. And then the archangel Michael comes to save, comes to fight the dragon. Well, what is the name of the hero that fights the Terminator in the first movie? It's a version of the name Michael,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So he's
Okay.
literally taking it all from I mean, I'm surprised that people don't know this, but he's literally taking it from Revelation chapter 12.
It makes sense now that you pointed out.
Hmm.
We're live with Jeff Nyquist. If you're just joining us, now that I've rediscovered my share screen capability,
Hmm.
let me show you something else here, which is interesting,
Okay.
along with the topic that we're in tonight. And that'll be this image that I'm going to pull up here. Okay, stand by. Here we go. Okay, I want you to look at this. Have you seen this movie from the 60s? Probably
No, I've
67,
never heard
68.
about it. No, I don't.
Okay,
That's unfamiliar. I grew up in the 60s. I
you've
never heard of it.
you've got to get this one. It's called Colossus the Forbin Project. You can order it on Amazon. They've
Yeah.
got it in DVD, even Blu-ray. And
Huh.
what's interesting about it is that this particular movie, which has got actor Eric Braeden in it, and let me just get the actual date. It's okay, 1970, Colossus the Forbin Project. I want you to check that out, Jeff, because I think it could help the research you're doing. Elon Musk had to have watched this movie because he's named one of his big AI supercomputers Colossus. And without spoiling the movie, the government solved the problem. They think of how to prevent nuclear war between America and Russia.
Hmm.
And so America brings online this supercomputer called Colossus. And it's protected in a mountain with all this new high-tech security. And when they put it online, it becomes aware it's an AI computer. The problem is Russia got the information America was doing. They built their own. And these two computers begin to talk to each other. They create their own language. And this is like almost coming off the front pages of what happened with Facebook. Facebook had to shut down some of their AI systems a couple years ago because the AI they created began to talk to each other in a special language, and nobody knew what the hell they were talking about or what they were planning to do. So they unplugged them. Well, I mentioned some of these names before. We're talking about Peter Thiel, Sam Altman, Elon Musk, and I've seen some of the interviews that have been done with these guys, especially this one called Andreville, which is this Palmer. If you're not familiar with Palmer Luckey, you'll need to Google him. He's a young guy, young genius, and his uniform, if you will, is a Hawaiian shirt with shorts.
How do you spell the last name?
His name is Palmer Luckey, Luckey, and he's created some of the most amazing military hardware I've ever seen. His company, he's an American entrepreneur. He's 32 years old, a billionaire, and he actually got his claim to fame. He created the Oculus goggles
Oh.
for VR that
Hmm.
Facebook, Zuckerberg, bought it.
Hmm.
And then, they bought Oculus, and then they've got a new generation that came out a few years ago.
Hmm.
I actually owned a pair. pretty amazing. But he went into becoming a military contractor. And look, I don't think Lockheed Martin or these other DARPA, these other, what do they call them, skunk works companies, got anything on what these guys are doing. I mean, you ought to see the stuff that Palmer Luckey has come up with. And it's not just on the drawing board. They've got working military hardware, and a lot of it is drone technology. This stuff looks like something that would come out of, one of the Marvel comic movies that Iron Man would create. If you watched any of the Iron Man stuff, he always had this state-of-the-art weaponry.
Mm-hmm.
These guys here, Palantir, Palmer and Luckey, and I'm glad they're on our side, let's say, because of the stuff that they're creating. But then, we see, as you mentioned earlier in the program, about Ukraine is just one of the leaders of the pack in using drones,
yeah,
warfare.
And drones, of course, are robots. They're flying robots. Optics,
yeah, that they were using, and this swarm drones. We talked a couple programs back about how China had a guy out there doing a demonstration with a laptop, and he was controlling about 1,000 drones,
and
it had him flying in such a tight pattern he could make him look like any type of light show effect you wanted.
Yeah, the Chinese.
And
imagine you could have thousands of these drones heading against a naval task force, against a land force, against anything, against a government. You had the Israelis using drones to assassinate Iranian scientists, crashing them through people's bedrooms.
Oh yeah, no problem with that. They're equipping them with machine guns, everything. My point is I don't think this is all coincidence. The AI with advanced military hardware and information grid, digital system, I think these guys are building the backbone of the beast. And, the sad part is President Trump, who I support, has maybe been bamboozled. As soon as he came in, he brought these guys into the Oval Office, and he's saying, "Hey," he looked at it as a investment into our economy, but what are they actually building over there in their super data centers? And what happens when he leaves? Has he opened the door? Did we have any choice? Was going to happen inevitably anyway? That they're building this stuff that is going to actually be our undoing and put us all under a worldwide web, if you will, of control. I mean, already the AI has infiltrated our smartphones, Jeff, and most Windows computers. And there is no encryption available anymore. Because if AI sees it, it doesn't matter. Before, if it sees it before you send your encrypted message, let's say with Proton Mail, that I use, which I got on board because I didn't want anybody to spy on my emails, especially hackers, or if I'm typing in a password or my Bitcoin address or whatever you're doing, AI sees it. It's taking snapshots. Encryption is gone.
Mm-hmm.
There is no privacy anymore.
Yeah.
And if this brain that they're building is in real time looking through your hard drives at your photos and describing what it sees, something that's legal today could be banned tomorrow. Or just as we were talking about earlier today, the UK has police officers that patrol Facebook and other platforms, and they look for UK citizens that are speaking out against, unchecked immigration.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And they're fast-tracking their arrest and their sentencing in courts.
I think there's 10,000 people in Great Britain who've been arrested for this. I've seen that number.
Free speech.
Yeah.
It's gone over there, if they ever had it at all. But now with AI, it can do it automated. Mm-hmm. There's a program out there right now that YouTube uses, and I think Google, who owns YouTube, so it's Google.
Mm-hmm.
It'll analyze everything that is uploaded on YouTube against a list of about 10,000 keywords if they want to do that.
Hmm.
and it'll give them an instant transcription. And if I say something that they don't like, they can flag me. It's happened before. I'm talking about, I guess, many diverse topics here, but I want to pull it together. I mean, this is dark. Now, so what is Peter Thiel? What is he talking about the Antichrist? Why are people now all of a sudden seeing these UFOs manifest? These demons, these supernatural angel beings. Tucker Carlson said he's had an experience attacked by a demon.
Hmm.
Tucker Carlson. Everybody, knows he's not a sensationalist. I don't think
Well,
this is any accident. I think that this is part of the end time plan. What do you think?
read this. Read the people should read this book. This is Marzinski's book
Let's
about.
see. Let me put you
Yeah.
up on screen here.
I
Let's
mean,
focus in on
yeah.
that for a second.
I mean, this
There you
is his
go.
book, and people. I mean, it's an amazing journey into the psychotic mind, breaking the spell of the ivory tower. Jerry Marzinski and Sherry Swiney. These are psychologists, and they've looked at psychotic individuals, at paranoid schizophrenics, and they have said basically, look, these voices are real. They represent a consciousness outside the person. There's more psychologists getting the courage to speaking up about this. I've seen on the internet. You can find different ones that are saying, look, take the voices seriously. There's something going on here. And
Yes.
this needs to be investigated. But you see, if there's something coming from another dimension and it's non-human or anti-human, and they want to they get some kind of pleasure. I mean, it's the theologically, it's the idea that Satan can't attack God, but he can attack God's creation, and
Yes, you
the
can.
main
Exactly.
thing in God's creation is man,
Yes.
and so he can corrupt man, he can hurt man, and he can get at God that way. That's part of the story that is
Jeff,
given about this.
have you already drawn your conclusions, or are you still investigating the matter?
Well, I'm still investigating. I mean, we don't know what's going on other planets. We don't know if there is an extraterrestrial side to everything, whether that could be. And with the interdimensional, there's just so much we don't know. We've got a literature. Keel was one of the first people to point it out, and then Vallée kind of followed, more grudgingly following the scientific evidence that we're looking at an interdimensional intelligence that has, what's interesting, technology. These things aren't doing it abracadabra. These things are doing what they're doing. These are machines. And the retrieval stories, we've got the second guy in Congress,
Hmm.
another batch of people saying, look, there's a crash retrieval program. Retrieval program means there's actually machines and there's
Right.
technology, and we can copy that technology. So that is mind bending, and that is scary. But and of course, you've got cutting edge physics. I think it was Annie Jacobson wrote the book Phenomenon, where she interviews Uri Geller, the Israeli psychic, and she has a part of the book that's really very strange, talking about cutting edge. We're talking about quantum physics, and we're talking about spooky things like that come out of chaos theory and quantum mechanics, where this cutting edge science, and this is so weird in her story, that people who work in this area, they develop very strange illnesses which normal medicine doesn't know how to deal with. Now, what are
Yes.
these illnesses? They're paranormal illnesses. You are dealing with the edge of reality. You're going to the edge of reality.
Yes.
You're getting close to the abyss of this interdimensionality.
That's
And
right.
these are, I think, if I remember, and people can read the book and correct me, it's like usually fatal within 5 years of them coming down with the symptoms. And so she has an interview. It's anonymous, with a doctor who's part of a special medical team that tries to help these people.
Wow.
An unconventional type of medicine, so that
Yes.
that this spooky physics really involves people being unraveled, being destroyed physically by involvement with it.
Have you read uh, Jacobson's book on Area 51?
Yes. Yeah. Now
So,
that is really peculiar because she's got a 91, 92-year-old physicist from the Manhattan Project
right.
telling her that Roswell was a Soviet device that Stalin sent. They used Mengele. They'd captured Mengele, and they mangled children to make them look like aliens, put them on these saucers that were made by the Soviets. They'd captured a project from the Germans, and they sent these things. They brought these things into Mexico, and they popped them over the border into New Mexico, intending to create a War of the Worlds scenario. And the things crashed in New Mexico, and the bodies were recovered, but the bodies were of human teenagers or children who were altered
Yes.
through these
That had
horrific
palsy or
experiments. Yeah.
what's that condition? It kind of makes your face
And
contorted.
encephalitis, or I don't know.
Cerebral palsy.
Yeah.
He's basically took these and did cosmetic surgery on. Now that may be true, um,
Yeah. And she
but
claims this guy broke down, this physicist, and it strikes me as somewhat real. This physicist broke down and sobbed because he
yes,
had a Down syndrome grandchild.
that's it. Down
And
syndrome.
the
Yes,
United States had done monkey see, monkey do. Somebody in the intelligence community thought, well, we want to make our own aliens. So they got Down syndrome children and did horrific experiments here about it. Now, maybe some of the secrecy behind some of this is to hide crimes like that were committed.
exactly.
You
Well,
know.
the Nazis did that. The
Yes.
Japanese did it. They all
Yep.
did experimentation,
Yep.
and they did more than just build underground bunkers so they could, hide out, or underground factories so they could build more rockets. There was research going on underground. They were, doing autopsies on people and vivisection and horrific medical experiments.
Hmm.
And Mengele, when he got out with the documents, he had a briefcase of them. He was intercepted, and the U.S. government got that briefcase. Now he escaped and was down in South America reportedly till about 1980 when they said he had a heart attack on the beach and died. But my
Well,
friend Harry Cooper,
yeah. Let me just say one thing about that, and then you can continue with Cooper.
yes,
But the Soviets, we know, got control of most of the Nazi diaspora at the end of the war. How do we know that?
oh,
Because
okay,
Hitler's right-hand man, Martin Bormann, was a Soviet agent. The head of the Gestapo, Heinrich Müller, was a Soviet agent. And
wow,
there's been a Pulitzer Prize-winning author wrote a book called Hitler's Traitor about this. And I spoke to a former CIA, a former OSS and CIA guy shortly before his death, who was mentioned in a book that he wrote, and I needed to know about it. And what you need to know is that there's a memoir written by the head of SS Foreign Intelligence, whose name was Walter Schellenberg. The book is called The Labyrinth. It's published under other
oh
titles too.
yes, the labyrinth,
And he talks about his battle with Martin Bormann, and that the head of the Gestapo, Heinrich Müller, tried to recruit him as a Soviet agent. And he
tried to
recounts that recruitment. Yeah, in April
recruit
1943.
Schellenberg.
Yeah, tried to recruit
Okay,
Schellenberg. So the main communist spy hunter in Nazi Germany was a communist agent, was Stalin's agent.
that's amazing. Now you were
And
the one who told me they also had a back channel right to the Kremlin.
right, and this was discovered by the head of military intelligence, Admiral
Gernitz.
the head of the Abwehr,
Oh,
um,
okay,
and it was I'm trying to remember his name. He was a German admiral who was the head of it, and he and Reinhard Gehlen, one of his deputies, discovered these transmitters, and they went to Hitler, and Hitler said, "This is my back channel to Stalin," and there's a cooperation between Hitler and Stalin at the end of the war. You can see it in the Battle of the Bulge. The Russians
amazing.
put all their last Panzer divisions against who? The Americans. Took them
Yes,
all off the Eastern Front, and the Russians just sat there and didn't do anything to the Germans while they were hitting the Americans. That's an agreement. And you can look at it in the military operations of the time. If you study the war, you'll see this. And so when the Soviets, Stalin said, he said this, "Oh, Hitler's alive in Argentina, and the Americans and British let him get away." So they say the same thing about Mengele. Why? because Stalin said you always accuse your enemy of what you yourself have done. They got Mengele. They were the ones that got Hitler out of Germany, if he did get out of Germany. They were the ones that did it, but they're blaming the Americans. Why? Because they had the secret deal. They had the dirty deal, not us. So they try to
Wow.
say Operation Paperclip, which was really about Reinhard Gehlen wasn't a Nazi. He was just a German aristocratic military officer who worked for Admiral Canaris. That was the head of the admiral.
Canaris,
He worked
okay.
for Canaris. These guys were Nazis. In fact, Hitler wanted to put Reinhard Gehlen in a mental institution because
Wow.
he wasn't a straight up Nazi and didn't agree with his craziness. So the thing is, a lot of Germans were fighting for the country. They weren't Nazis. Okay, so
Right.
the idea that every
Right.
German is a Nazi and the Americans
No.
brought these Germans over, right? I mean, Werner von Braun had been a Nazi, but I think
Sure.
Werner von Braun converted to Christianity. He had a change.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he did.
I hope he did. You know,
He had a,
he,
he had a,
he's,
I mean, look, he had a spiritual experience. I mean, I can't speak
it's
for the man,
amazing.
but he put a man
It's
on the
amazing.
moon. God blessed him with that. And
I
so,
hope he really did.
yeah, I
That's
hope
I
so
didn't know
too.
that.
Yeah, and the thing is we believe in redemption and whatnot. But you see,
Oh, sure.
the Russians turned it around. So they put all these toxic stories out that the Americans are really the Nazis working with the Nazis when they were the ones that were. And to this day, what is Russia doing? The Golden Dawn Party in Greece, which is a real Nazi party, they
Okay.
look to Moscow. They get their instructions from them, and they coordinate with the Greek communists.
You mean in 2025 we've got actual Nazis still alive?
Oh yeah, there's
Golden
Nazis all over the world. Now
Golden Dawn.
they don't get to win 20% in an election. Briefly, they had a moment in the sun there, the Golden Dawn Party in Greece. But yeah, there's Nazis all over the world. There's what do
It's
they call
amazing.
it? It has esoteric Hitlerism. This crazy writer out of Chile, he was a Chilean diplomat. He wrote esoteric Hitlerism. There's people that worship Hitler like he's the second coming.
Now, what of these claims that there's a Ukrainian military unit that is a Nazi unit?
It's not really a Nazi unit. First of all, um, you're talking
I
about
forget
the
the name of the
Azov
group.
Battalion.
Oh, that's it. Azov.
Became a regiment or brigade, I think. Well, first of all, the Azov movement, the Azov idea came from Moscow to Kharkiv, what the Russians call Kharkov. The guys that were interested in it were Russian-speaking Ukrainians. Okay, the two guys that got, and it was like a flirtation with Nazi-like ideas, certain ideas that you could say were Nazi. They had a certain sympathy for it. But anyway, when the war in Donbass broke out, there was a Jewish oligarch who wanted to raise units. These guys, I guess, had some military background. They formed the unit, the Azov Battalion. But the people who entered the battalion were not Nazis. They weren't recruited ideologically. The guy paying for it was Jewish. These guys' ideology wasn't a particularly big idea. And we have to remember, people, that in Ukraine, and people who hate communism in Ukraine, they remember one period where people fought communism in World War II, and those people were working with the Germans and the Nazis. And so that is
Okay.
in the background. So we have to remember that's part of the background, but it doesn't mean they're Nazis. And of course, you look at the flag, the battalion flag, it's not a swastika. It's two letters taken from the Ukrainian alphabet that were interposed together to form the symbol. But people say, oh, it kind of looks like a swastika. Now, these two, I forget the name. I read a scholarly paper on this, which you really have to go into detail. These guys, you could say they thought, well, maybe Hitler was okay and maybe the Holocaust didn't happen, that kind of thing, where you got a lot of people who will flirt with that. The people that entered the regiment that fought did not believe, there was no requirement that they accept that or they believe that. They
Okay.
didn't. They were Ukrainian patriots. And again, a Jewish oligarch, Ukrainian oligarch, financed it. It was not a Nazi unit. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Two of the guys that helped form it had some of those ideas. As far as Ukraine, then being, I've heard people say, oh yeah, most of the Ukrainian army is Nazi units. No, it's not. The Azov battalion, you know what a battalion is? You know how many divisions are in the Ukrainian army? And that a battalion, there's three
There's only
regiments. I mean, there's three battalions to
two
a regiment
companies.
and it's three companies usually,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right. So there's 3 battalions to a regiment, 3 regiments to a division. There's dozens of divisions in the Ukrainian army. This thing is a tiny unit. It
Oh,
does
that's got
not
small.
represent.
Just
Yeah, it's a small unit. It's not the Ukrainian army. In fact, in the Ukrainian parliament in the 2014 elections, I think the number of people in the Rada, the Ukrainian parliament, that you could call Nazis or neo-Nazis. There's the Svoboda party. I don't think they had more than a half dozen representatives in the Rada. So you have 6 people. We probably got 6 people who secretly are Nazis in the U.S. Congress. So you can't say that these Svoboda party, and I think the numbers may be even lower. They ended up losing all their representation. I don't think they have anybody in there now. So the idea that Ukraine, and they have a Jewish president.
thanks for the
Zelensky's Jewish.
clarification on that, because you hear that bantered around there. But I wasn't aware that Greece had some active
Yeah, the
Nazi
Golden Dawn.
organizations
Now,
there.
this was bigger a decade ago. This was more
Amazing.
significant. They had like a surge, and I think it was in reaction to not African and Middle Eastern immigration into Greece. Just like you
Well,
have in Great Britain, people don't want Muslims coming into their country and bringing their religion because it creates a conflict between the values of the people in Greece or Britain or France or the U.S. Because if you're a Muslim, a true believing Muslim, you cannot swear an oath of allegiance honestly to the U.S. Constitution because you believe in the Ummah. Your nation is not America; it's the nation of Islam. It's the Islamic nation, and the only law is the law set down by Muhammad.
oh, that's a good point.
There is one God and his prophet is Muhammad. That's the tenet of Islam, and it's a political religion. It doesn't just
Yes.
it has its political side, so that you have secular and the religious is put together. We don't have that in the West because of the Enlightenment. We allow people religious freedom in the West. Well, we allow Muslims religious freedom. Well, they don't really believe in it, so there's a conflict there.
Well, I think all these subjects here are tied together. I
Yes.
mean, we're talking about communism as Satanism in disguise, and we've got this worldwide grid forming, AI, intelligence, spy, total surveillance network is, I guess, the term I'll use. Control grid. We're seeing uh, we're seeing these occult groups, of course, just coming out in the open. But we're seeing now the UFO side sightings. It's undeniable. People are seeing something. There is something out there real. Now I'll give you my take on it. That these are interdimensional beings. I believe that these are combination. It could be fallen angels, could be good angels. It could be evil spirits, the demons, the little guys on the ground. There's even in the Christian community. There's a debate as to what are the origins of demons. Nobody agrees. The Bible doesn't really clarify it. Their origin. It does say they're evil spirits. Derek Prince said, I don't agree with the fact that many people just believe that they are none other than the fallen angels that fell with Lucifer. He says, I believe that's a different group than what we're talking about with these evil spirits that we're casting out of people, the demons. He said, I believe, to quote him, paraphrase him, he said, I believe God created many different things for different
Absolutely.
purposes.
You've got billions of galaxies, each with billions of stars, in the reach of our telescopes. So
Now, a lot
the
of
idea
people,
that creation doesn't extend out, with more creatures, it very well could.
are advancing the idea, and you can't back it up. It's just it's unproven that demons are the spirits of the Nephilim, the offspring of the fallen angels or whatever being that was that kept not its estate and mated with women in Genesis 6, and they created the giants, and they had children, and these things died, and these are the Nephilim. They quote the book of Enoch,
Hmm.
but there's 3 books of Enoch. And the one they salvaged came out of Ethiopia, so who knows for sure. But I will tell you something. I've been doing deliverance off and on for 15 years now,
Hmm.
and I've had an opportunity to pray for people, and I've seen demonic manifestations. We've talked to demons on occasion that would speak. They spoke to Jesus. Jesus said, "What is your name?" They said, "Our name is Legion, for we are many." Are you here to
Mm-hmm.
cast us out before our time? Judge us before our time. Demons can speak. They can take people's vocal cords
Mm-hmm.
over. They can take over their bodies. If a person opens up the door and submits to them, doesn't fight against them. Um, we prayed for people that were being paralyzed by what is probably called succubus. I prayed for people that have been raped by demons. I believe that's actually going on.
Mm-hmm.
No question about it. With these UFOs, a lot of times, as you mentioned, you see sightings of orbs and missing time, and some people see these small creatures called grays. All this stuff's real. Look, I had a lady here at my house in Bali, Indonesia, came from the church. She played the bass, and my wife said, "Hey, can you pray for this lady? She needs prayer." I said, "Well, sure. What's going on?" "Well, she's just troubled." And I'd seen her play the bass in church here. She came over, Jeff, and we began to pray for her.
Mm-hmm.
And this girl manifested with demons,
Mm-hmm.
went on the floor and began to slither like a snake across the floor. Went under my kitchen table. I had to grab her by the ankle, gently, and pull her out.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, she got up, full on manifested with demons, and she began to go into martial arts poses. She did a split on the floor, and then did like perfect Tai Chi.
Hmm.
Something like out of Crouching Dragon, the martial arts movie. And my wife left me. She had to go in the back room with the baby, and I said, "Oh my goodness, I got no backup here." And I said, "It's all on now." Dude, the spiritual battle ensued, and I command these demons to come out of her in Jesus' name, and they came out after a battle. But I'm here to tell you, that was not her. There was something in her body. It was an evil spirit, a demon. And we've done hundreds of deliverances, exorcisms, whatever you want to use as a term. I really like to use the word exorcism because the world understands that. They don't understand the term deliverance. They may be thinking you're talking about that Burt Reynolds movie, and I don't recommend anybody go watch it, called Deliverance. It's pretty nasty.
Hmm.
If you haven't seen it, don't watch it.
I haven't seen it.
But these things are real. But I believe, this is just my opinion, that there's a whole kingdom out there. Just like a military is made up of generals and colonels and majors and the foot soldiers down to the private. Satan has his host of hell, his hierarchy, and he's got his fallen angels and his demons. I believe he has all types of creatures out there. And they're all nefarious. And as you mentioned earlier, if Satan can masquerade as an angel of light, and the angels came to Lot and then looked like men, and there were people that wanted to get him and rape him, and there were angels that were eating, and it's the Bible said, I heard this today quoted, be careful unless you entertain an angel unaware. You don't know, sometimes you may be looking at what looks like a human, and it's an actual angel. If there's good angels, there's evil angels, and there's evil spirits. So I don't guess it really matters what is the origin of these evil spirits. Jesus said, "In my name you shall cast out devils." He cast them out. He spent the last 72 hours before he was crucified and rose again, casting out devils and doing cures. So they are real. They're on the move. People are inviting them in and opening doors and getting these things in them. And these things, if they sting long enough, they'll take you out in a body bag, because they come to kill, steal, and destroy. So my thinking is this is not a demon that is being cited, but it's probably one of those angelic beings, probably a fallen angel, or maybe some other created being that's on the dark side, coming through the veil. Because, Jeff, didn't look at our ancient history, there were all these sightings of the gods that came down, even Mexico and the Aztecs, Quetzalcoatl, and they drew pictures of them, and some of them look like spacemen and spaceships. Even India's got them. All these ancient races, didn't they have a tradition where the gods came down and gave them technology?
There's a book called Hamlet's Mill, and it's actually, the Sumerian legend is that like an aquatic humanoid thing came out of the sea and gave them the rudiments of civilization. Then you have a similar what is it the Nogon people in Africa have an almost identical myth. See, there's some of the oldest mythologies that we know of. But
The Egyptians with
the
Osiris.
Egyptian, yeah, religion is, and the Greeks, um, and of course the ancient Germans,
Right. Right.
the Vikings, the Nordics. There's their gods. Jupiter is a sky god. Zeus is a sky god, right? Throwing thunderbolts. Thor is a sky god. You have, what's interesting is in the Egyptian religion, they have something called the Apep, which is a snake that existed before God made light and existed in the chaos of the darkness.
Excuse
And
me.
that this is very similar to the Satan story. And the Apep, when the light was created, it was jealous of the light. And so it wanted to destroy the light. So the myth was that that their sun god, Ra, every time the sun would go down, the Apep would attack the sun so it wouldn't rise in the morning.
Hmm.
And there was a constant struggle between light and darkness, the Apep being the snake or the serpent that represented the darkness. It's
Now,
interesting.
Jonathan Kahn, that's interesting. You said that he has just come out with a book. I haven't read any of his books, but I've heard some of his meetings. Amazing guy. He's got one called The Avatar, just came out. And his basic assumption, basic statement is there's the return of the gods are happening now.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if that's why we're seeing all this paranormal, supernatural UFO sightings. Are we seeing an incursion on mankind like happened back in Genesis 6?
Well, in Mayan and ancient civilizations, you've got the winged serpent, the dragon, which is represented in Revelation. You've got it all over pagan mythology. And one of the things which I think Herbert Schirmer was a Nebraska state trooper who got taken aboard a UFO. It's a very famous case, and he was interrogated by military interrogators
Wow.
afterwards, and it's in the Blue Book files. And Schirmer met this alien, and he had the symbol of the feathered serpent on his uniform,
Really?
right? The supposed being that he met on this UFO. So you see this feathered serpent symbolism associated with UFOs, which is associated with these ancient religions. And of course, the Aztec religion was very demonic because they sacrificed thousands of people.
Oh, yes.
They would open them up and take their beating heart out of their chest when they were alive and decapitate
That's
them
right.
and bounce their heads down the steps of the step pyramid. This is what
Barbaric.
they were engaged in, is massive ritual human sacrifice to some kind of Moloch, right?
Yes.
Very frightening religion.
Is that not what is going on today?
Well, some people say that with this emerging Satanism, there's child sacrifices going on in secret. And you've got human traffic. And I saw a Catholic exorcist, very excellent. He was older, he was retired, talking about, he said something very intriguing about pedophilia. And he said that people who harm children in this way open themselves up to demonic possession.
Yes. For sure.
And that's very interesting because the Soviet Union started to harness pedophilia as a weapon back in the 1970s when Andropov was the head of the KGB. And when you do that, you really have gone so far to the dark side that you yourself are being subjected to something that you may not be in control of yourself anymore.
Oh, you open up a doorway to demons and become demonic and possessed.
Now there is a hysteria people can get involved with, and you know about Salem and the witch trials
Sure.
in the
Sure.
1600s. But if you read the biography of Cotton Mather, you find a more nuanced story. There was I believe it was an Irish washerwoman who put a curse on two young girls who started to vomit nails and levitate and so forth,
Wow.
just like out of The Exorcist. And the
Wow.
community in Boston was frightened by this. They didn't know what to do. And they wanted her to take the curse away. They jailed her. They didn't want to execute her. They sent her away to Europe
Yes.
for instructions because they'd never had this kind of phenomenon in the colonies before. And Cotton Mather was at the time, his father was the most, he was the head of what is it, Harvard, and was the leader of that, and was the most prominent clergyman in New England. Cotton Mather came back from his travels, and they heard about this and thought, well, this woman, this is wrong. You can't jail her. This doesn't happen. And he met her, and she admitted the whole thing to him. Said,
Okay.
yeah, I put a curse on the girls. Why don't you take it off? Aren't you a Christian? Well, I won't give up my prince, whoever her prince was. She had voices. She heard voices, this woman. They eventually did hang her. She refused to repent or take the curse off. I think it was 3-4 years later, they did hang her reluctantly. But this was a real phenomenon. And Cotton Mather wrote about it. There are many witnesses that had testified to it. Now, you ended up
Yes.
having the phenomenon in Salem, where, and I think even Mather felt guilty that they maybe, they got, you could see, you could get very, this could make you crazy paranoid. And people are subject
Yes.
to suggestions. So it may be that some innocent people were executed that shouldn't have been, that it
Well,
went too
sure.
far. And Cotton
Yeah.
Mather warned people about it. And then what's interesting is you had then angelic channelings after this, and they don't write about this in the literature about Salem, where they said, oh, we just love Cotton Mather,
Wow.
and saying wonderful things about him. And you know what his reaction was? I don't trust any of this. There's something wrong here. They saying I'm the best thing since sliced bread.
Right.
A lot of controversy. When you get into this, it gets very, very thick and dark fast.
Big
And
time.
so people need to beware of both. Yes, it's real, but people can get carried away and become hysterical. You can burn people at the stake who shouldn't be burned at the stake, right?
Well,
You had
sure.
the witch hysteria in Europe. I think it was Colin Wilson who wrote a famous history of the occult. He said, look, some of these people they burnt were engaged in the occult and were doing bad things. And
Oh,
Colin
yeah.
Wilson in the UK said this. But yeah, innocent people were killed too.
And
So
some of them were
yeah,
just blamed just so they would be executed by people who didn't like them, had a
or
vendetta against them.
they want their property. It's an old widow lady.
Right.
Somebody wants their land. Oh, look, we'll accuse her of being a witch. Yeah, there's a lot of, just like with the hysteria under Stalinism, falsely accusing people of being agents of the West. Once you create an engine of hysteria, there's a famous story about Stalin when he's having his fake trials. There's this woman in Kiev, and she was accusing many of the leaders of the Communist Party in Ukraine of being Western agents, of being wreckers, and so on. And Khrushchev said, "This woman's crazy." And Stalin said, "Well, why is she crazy?" Stalin was paranoid. I believe her. And then she accused Khrushchev, and then Stalin said, "I know you. She's crazy," and that stopped it. But the hysteria can affect the mind of the leadership.
Well, and speaking
It
of
feeds on itself.
communism, I know we're getting late, so I'll wrap it up. But here in Indonesia, there was the purges. There was a hostile takeover,
Yeah.
and they drove out Sukarno, and then Suharto came in and became a dictator for like the next 30 years in the 60s, somewhere around 64, 65.
Didn't he kill 1 million communists, supposedly?
Supposedly communist, and you know where about half of them were? Right here on this island of Bali. There's mass graves under coffee shops. You won't know
Mm.
it. They killed them in Medan, and over here in Sumatra, and
Mhm.
over here in Bali, and basically paramilitary groups just went and said, if you're a communist, and they targeted a lot of the Chinese, especially if you were Chinese, you were a dead man. Um, if they found out you were a Chinese, because they assumed you were communist,
Mhm.
and you may have been, but they would just grab people out of their homes. Women, they would slice off their breast, gut them. They would cut off your balls,
Mm.
cut your head off, throw you in the river, strangle you to death. Brutalism like you've never seen, except maybe over in Africa, what they're doing now.
Mhm.
And people were killed that were innocent.
Yeah, sure. That's the
They
thing
just
about this.
accuse you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you're a communist. And no, it was your neighbor didn't like you and wants you dead and wants your land.
Yeah.
And then the government has been indoctrinating the students that, oh, well, Suharto, came in and they overthrew communism. No, this was a hostile coup. Not to say there weren't some communists here,
Hmm.
but it's come out that the American State Department gave a list of people for them to go find and execute. Now that's sad.
It is sad.
And
Um,
it's coming out in documentaries and stuff, but all in the name of defeating communism.
yeah, see, evil people exist on all sides of all equations, and it's inside
Sure.
the human heart. And this is why this killing of Charlie Kirk, getting back to the beginning, is
Yes.
so bad because it creates this hysteria, like an evil hysteric like Alex Jones will say, "It's war, it's war, it's war." It's like go right to the violence, right? Go right to blanketing everything.
Yeah.
Um,
He said Israel. I mean, he's become anti-Semitic so much so that I hardly even want to go to his website anymore. He
well,
says
it's what he was at the beginning. It's just coming out of him
it's
now.
coming out. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're trying to blame everything on Israel. Maybe it was Israeli operative. BS. Come on.
yeah.
Um, but I'm anxious to know who is the guy that they caught today. And by the way, before we wrap this up, again, there's some video of these guys making hand signs. It looks like was their accomplices. I want to know who was on that private jet and the radar was turned off.
Does that
These are
jet
some
go back
questions.
to China or Russia? Where does that jet go?
Well, it took off an hour after the murder of Charlie from the Utah airport. A private plane that somebody said turned off their radar. What's that little thing that gives you a ping so you know your location?
Transponder?
Turns off the transponder. I don't think you're supposed to do that. So
No.
there's a theory that they got whoever it was out of there, but maybe not now that they say they've caught him. I don't know. There's just a lot of crazy questions going around, but it's sad what happened, and yeah,
It's easy to create a conspiracy theory. This could have been a lone guy.
it
This
could have
this
been.
story about the book published on the 9th on Amazon could be false.
That's true.
These kind of stories can drive people to this hysteria, maybe intentionally. And you see the
Yep.
rhetoric that our enemy Russia is putting out through Dugin and others, trying to light a fire under us to kill each other, to become hysterically paranoid of each other. An event like this should draw people together.
Oh, absolutely, and I think it's going to do that. I think a lot of people are rallying and saying, hey, this is one brave man. He stood up for what he believed in, and he tried to love people and just have
Yeah,
open dialogue. And we need more of this. We can't
yeah.
afford to be silenced. Jeff, before I forget, you mentioned on the subject of the UFOs, one of the first books you were talking about, someone was tracking demons, um, and they were looking into this. They were researching it from I think it may have been a psychiatrist or someone.
You're talking about Jacques Vallée's book
That may be it.
Dimensions? Yeah. He doesn't
Dimensions.
actually say demons, but someone writing who was a little bit ahead of him, a journalist, John A. Keel, wrote a book, Why UFOs Operation Trojan Horse. And he said
Oh,
in the book, it's interesting, he said, what if the plan is to process millions of minds so that we suddenly have a world of armed maniacs shooting at each other from bell towers? That
well,
was
if
he wrote that book in I think the early 70s.
demons are killers, there's no question about it. And if they can get into a person, then they can basically hijack you and live vicariously through you and live out their desires in that person to
Well,
do
what they
evil.
do, these paranoid schizophrenics, Marzinski and Van Dusen write about this. It poisons your mind. They're constantly
Yep.
telling you negative things
Yes.
about yourself, about the world. Everything's bad. Everything's horrible. I mean, this is you have famously Kierkegaard wrote about the sin of despair. Kierkegaard talked about despair being at the base of everything. Despair is the opposite of faith. Faith is what buoys us up, which strengthens us, but despair weakens us. So these demonic voices start by demoralizing you, by leading you into despair. This is one thing people must not do is despair.
Oh, absolutely.
The sin of
And
despair. It's a real thing, because what does despair do? It excuses you for being wicked, for doing wicked things.
this book you're going to do, you have a title yet for it?
No, I don't.
Well, I tell you, I know it's going to be a good book. And I want to say, have you seen a live exorcism in person yet?
No, no, I have not. But I have seen people who are possessed, who have
As
admitted to me
part
that
of
they are
your
possessed.
as part of your research, would you like to see one?
Oh boy.
So the reason I asked it and led with that question is in Highland, Indiana, coming up in January, and then about 3 times a year they have a deliverance workshop. It goes from Friday through Sunday, and it's up at Hegwish Baptist Church in Highland, Indiana. It's the home of the late Win Worley, and I've
Hmm.
known them for about 15 years. They're good people. I've been up there about twice. I'm going to try to get up there again. It's been a while since I've been there, but anybody's invited to come. Now, January is just for the men. It's an annual men's conference, but then a couple times of the year, the whole family can come. And basically, they just have some ministers. They teach on deliverance topics,
Hmm.
and then they have the ability for people to come up and get prayer. And if a person doesn't believe in demons, just talking to the audience now, if you get to Hegwish, you will come face to face with demon-possessed people, and you will be a true believer when you walk out of there. Because Saturday night they do a thing called the mass deliverance, and essentially they go down a hit list of different evil spirits and they begin to call them out in Jesus' name, and people got them will manifest. And I'm sitting there the first night, Jeff, just short story, just going up to investigate, see what's going on up there. I
I
got
was,
up there,
yeah.
and there was a lady sitting across the church auditorium. All of a sudden went into a trance, and her eyes rolled back, and she began to bob her head, say, "Don't talk about him like that," because the pastor was preaching on how Satan fell. Dude, I said, I'm in for a weekend. Well, I saw demons in people manifesting, and even got a chance to pray for some people. I'm here to tell you they're real. And if part of your study you want to see some live, get up to Hegwish. It is a sight to behold, and you can talk to some people that have been doing deliverance for a very long time. They know how to. They got a motto up there: "We know how to deliver," or "We
I've
deliver."
I've
Hegwish.
seen I've seen the phenomenon up close, so I don't need to
Okay,
see it again. It's very
it's
creepy,
real.
by the way. It's disturbing.
Oh yeah.
Jerry Marzinski, I mean, in this book, and I'll show it here again.
Oh yeah.
This book,
Jerry Brzezinski.
Jerry Marzinski's book, along with Sherry Swiney, and of course they quote Van Dusen and Emanuel Swedenborg in here.
Okay.
Um, when they tell people you have to you have to oppose the voices in your head,
Yes.
the voices then want to talk to the psychologist.
Oh yeah.
And you know what the voices tell them? Stay out of our business. Leave
That's
us
right.
alone. This is
That's
our
right.
way. You're interfering with our way of life.
They're mine. You
Yeah,
can't have them. We're going to kill them.
yeah, that's right.
They'll listen.
Um,
They talk, man. They'll manifest. I haven't seen the Exorcist movie style where they went up the wall, but I had a friend who did,
mhm.
and he saw a lady go right up the wall. And you know it's interesting. Tucker Carlson's been interviewing people on this. So is Joe Rogan, I think. And you're on track here to come out with a really good book because this needs to be exposed. And I think the bottom line here, Jeff, is we're seeing this stuff come through the veil again. This could be the
Well,
return.
you look at Boston in 1691 or whatever it was, where Cotton Mather is seeing these
Oh,
girls vomiting nails and pins, and other
we did.
phenomena that he reports. It's just, I mean, look, the guy was a
Oh yeah.
rational, sane, educated man. He was not making it up.
There's
He was a
reports.
pillar of the Boston community. He couldn't have made any of this stuff up, and there were many witnesses that backed him up. So,
No,
I
it
mean,
happens. Snakes
yeah,
coming out of people, vomiting.
yeah.
I mean, no, especially in Africa. No, I'm sorry. The book I was asking you about was there's a book you said you had been reading where it went back to some of the early church fathers that were talking about debating. Do demons have bodies? Some do.
Oh,
Some
that was
agree.
Thomas Aquinas, the
Okay,
great
was there a book
philosopher.
though that
Yeah,
had.
they published it under the title, I think it's Evil, Thomas Aquinas on Amazon. It's I think the title
Oh,
of the book is Evil. It's part of the Summa Theologica.
that's what I
I
was looking for.
believe
Okay.
if you want the larger book, I mean, his writings, he is maybe one of the greatest geniuses of all history. This guy's IQ was through the roof, and he wrote on these very complicated subjects. And of course, the way he writes is he shows the argument, okay, do demons have bodies? And he quotes the authorities that say they do. Then he quotes the authorities that say they don't. And then he comes down on the side of the ones that say they don't. But I'm thinking when we're looking at this UFO thing that Aquinas got that wrong, that the authorities, so go back and read the authorities that say that they have bodies. That's really interesting to me because, we want to make everything neat. Here's the spiritual, here's the physical, but I don't think it's quite so neat as that. I think it's
Well,
messier than that.
I think I know they can inhabit a body. There's no question about it. They can inhabit an animal. They
Well,
can
look,
possess
we
them.
have the phenomenon they've proven in labs, they've proven telepathy is a real phenomenon. So if I can put a thought in your mind, if you can hear my voice, and I had this spontaneously happen to me when I was a kid. Think about this. I had a route getting parts for a garage, the Raymer Street garage that AT&T ran back in the 70s. And I was just a kid, and they were giving me the runaround to get a part. And
Yep.
so the mechanic was mad. And he was, and it was kind of it offended me that he's going to drive the route, and he's like implying I'm not doing the job. I'm not, and he wanted to really put the squeeze on him to give him the part. So we go in there, and of course they give him the same answer they gave me, and he is as fit to be tied. And we're driving through this downtown Van Nuys at
Yes.
rush hour. Traffic is horrible, and there's a place. They didn't make all the roads right back in those days. And there's a place where you have a light where there's no left-hand turn lane, just two lanes. And if you get in the left lane, you're going to be backed up a quarter of a mile when they all
Yes.
stop, because the people turning left are going to stop because there's no lane for them to go. Now we have it all regulated where if you're going to go left, you end up in this lane. You don't block the traffic. And I'd been through this. I learned this the hard way myself, getting stuck. And he was so upset. I couldn't say to him, I couldn't backseat drive him, right? Because I know the route.
Right.
And so I'm thinking to myself, get in the right lane, get in the right lane. I'm thinking it. So he gets in the right lane, and I think, oh, thank goodness. And then he turns to me and he said, why did you tell me to get in the right lane? And I looked at
And
him
you
and
didn't
said, I
say it.
didn't tell you. I just thought it. And we both looked at each other. I could see the surprise in his eyes. Right. You didn't say it. I heard you in my head.
That's
So that was
interesting.
spontaneous telepathy. So it does happen. It's a real thing. So if I
So
can get inside your head, and I'm physically real, right? A demon could be physically real and still be in your head.
so evil spirits are basically personalities without bodies. Think of them as a
They
person.
might have a body in another dimension,
Okay, that's a good point too.
or maybe
But
not. We don't know.
they can get into our bodies here if we open the door.
Well,
But
I
I
could get into,
also
or get into their, not their bodies, get into their head, get into
okay,
their
I
brain, control
also
their brain.
believe just as angels can appear as people, good angels, evil angels. Okay, you could be looking at a person. It could be a demonic entity, evil, whatever, evil angel. Um, but also, don't forget there's the element of astral projection,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
and apparently, um, people can come out of their bodies under demonic power and astral project, and potentially get into somebody else. There's a theory there. Now, I'll tell you the most bizarre thing in closing. Even in the deliverance ministry, I know a lot of people, and not everybody agrees,
Mm-hmm.
but they do agree that we need to cast demons out in Jesus' name. There are people that are being raped. They're having sex with evil spirits.
This is very ancient, and there's a long record of this going back
But
thousands of years.
let me take it to the next level.
Uh-huh.
There's a belief that they're stealing sperm and they're creating spirit babies.
Well, this is the
S-
same with the UFO abductees. They claim that they're having sperm and egg, and that they're creating these alien human hybrids. It's the
I
same
can't
sort of
I
story.
can't prove it, but there some good possibility that they're doing something with the sperm that happens when they attack people sexually. And you don't want to open the door to these things because once you do, it's going to be very hard to get them out. You can get them out, We got to repent and cast them out in Jesus' name. But a battle's going to ensue. So don't open the door. Don't invite them in.
Yeah.
We had a guy
Yeah.
calling for prayer who spoke out into the atmosphere and said anything out there have relations with him. A demon jumped in him, began to sexually abuse him. He developed cancer, and he said this thing would rape him day and night. He had to wear a metal butt plate. That's what he said.
So that
We called, we
implies
prayed for him.
physical. That implies a physical reality,
Oh no, it is a physical reality.
right?
It is
Yeah.
a physical
The same-
reality that
the-
people are being raped by
Yeah,
demonic
same-
spirits.
Same thing in Carla Turner's book about this contactee called Masquerade of Angels. But I should also point out Whitley Strieber's latest book, a very creepy book saying that these interdimensional beings, he calls them the visitors, he doesn't call them aliens or extraterrestrials.
Yes.
He's very careful in his terminology. He says that that he thinks, because he has seen things, being an abductee, that they grow bodies for them, that they enter so they can operate in this world, and there's implications in this, that these entities, somebody's growing their bodies, they're entering those bodies that they use temporarily, the grays. He says they're throwaway temporary bodies. And they don't care if they crash,
Really?
if the bodies are recovered, because they're only in them temporarily anyway. They're just instruments they're using to be in this world from that a dimension outside of time space that they come from.
Jeff, do you
That's
believe we have
very weird. It's very weird.
cloning technology that can clone human beings?
Well, it can yeah. Well, I mean, if you can grow bodies, whether it's human or parahuman bodies or whatever it is,
Right.
if you can start doing this,
Yep.
what then spiritually enters those bodies that are not made by the normal process of human conception? What are we doing
Exactly.
with that, right? Just like
Exactly.
the idea of a demonic AI. The people who think we're crazy, you go into quantum mechanics. There's a great book that I just read, written by Matthias Desmond, called The Psychology of Totalitarianism. And he gets into this, which, believe it or not, he gets into quantum mechanics and chaos theory and spooky science. And he says, look, the problem of this totalitarianism is the mechanistic materialism, where people believe there's only this, and they get demoralized, they become nihilistic, they adopt these
Yes.
totalitarian ways. And he said, man is a spiritual being. This spiritual reality is real.
Yes.
Physical reality is secondary or tertiary. I mean, this is the same thing. You find it in, with Aristotle's unmoved mover. You see it in the allegory of the cave with Plato. You've got it in Schopenhauer's philosophy. Bishop Berkeley, if a tree falls in a forest, right, and there's no one there to hear
Yes.
it, is there any noise? I mean, quantum mechanics is proving these guys are right. Physical reality is not primary. It's a derivative. And it's like one former Soviet physicist told me, who converted to believe in God, he did equations for a year, pencil and paper, and then God spoke to him. His name is Victor Kulish. And he was working on the Soviet Star Wars project. And he said that I said, well, what do these equations show? They show he's got the God principle. Everything is a system, like Matryoshka dolls are all within each other. A system is a bunch of things that are nested in each other. And he said,
Yeah.
the ultimate level is God. The God principle is the ultimate level, and it exists in everything. And the ultimate principle is God. And I said, well, what does that mean? And he says, it means the physical reality is created from moment to moment out of God's mind and out of the entities, the angels that are just below God. We're living in God's manifested creation, created out of God's mind.
Well, what's interesting is God sits outside of space and time, and he can look in, and he knows the future, and he had some of the prophets write about what was going to occur. But have you ever seen a YouTube video and it's got a timeline from start to finish, and you can move the little ball?
Right.
Think of that as their lifespan. I had a fly come in or something. And you could sit outside of that, and you could look in, zoom in. That's interesting.
Absolutely. Well, that's
the whole concept of time.
When I took metaphysics as a senior in university, it was the most difficult subject I ever took. And this was one of the main things they talk about, looking at Aristotle's metaphysics and the unmoved mover and the idea of God existing outside of time, space. Well, if he's
Yes.
created time and space and objects, if God has created that out of his mind, yeah, he's not inside of it, he's outside of it, he's created it out of himself. So yeah,
Do you
that's
think
mind-boggling.
CERN right now is trying to open up a portal?
Well, they're creating mini black holes, I think is what they call it, what they create, and it's kind of dangerous. The Russians have one of their own, by the way, secretly,
Oh,
where
oh
they're
really?
doing this.
I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
and I mean, human beings, just with fission power and the pollution that we've created, with Fukushima and Chernobyl and the dirty fission. It's just terrible. You're creating contaminants that last hundreds of thousands of years before they're safe. Um, this is something we should not be doing, but we don't have the wisdom to stop ourselves.
Absolutely. The Bible says in closing, break the hedge, the viper will bite. You open up that door, the demons come in. Jeff, I want to thank you for coming on tonight and going into overtime with me. What an amazing speaker you are and researcher. It's always a pleasure to have you on. I learn a lot every time. How can people get in contact with you? And do you have anything you would like to mention that's available right now, or you want to direct
Well,
people's interest to?
yeah, I'm going to be offering Origins of the Fourth World War on my website, a place where you can mail to get it, because the book is like, I don't know, $150 on Amazon.
Oh,
And I've got a bunch of, pristine copies in my garage, a couple
oh, you
hundred.
do?
So, yeah, so I'm going to be putting that on my website, which is jrnyquist.blog. Go to the bottom and you'll see I'm going to post it soon. And of course, my favorite book you can get on Amazon is The Fool and His Enemy. And
Okay.
I actually discuss UFOs in that book,
Um,
and these more cosmic ideas. So definitely, and the apocalypse and what's coming, and this problem with nuclear war and communism.
if someone wants to order directly from you at your website, um, are you able to autograph them if they were to request it?
Yeah, I could do that if they sent
Okay.
autographs. Yeah, because I'm the one who has to mail each copy
Right.
individually when it comes to those books, and of course it's a limited supply.
So
And
how do we place an order?
Well, you'll have to watch the website, because
Okay.
I moved here kind of recently and I don't have a PO box yet, and I don't want to give out my home address for reasons that we can see happen this week.
Oh yes.
Because I've received death threats and I've had very, very intrusive
Wow.
people. I mean,
Wow.
you do, if you say something controversial and you're anti-communist, you've got all kinds of crazies on the far left that are violent, Antifa
That's
type,
true. That's
and
true.
they just hate you. They want to rub you out. You're just an irritant to them. And so we live, unfortunately, in that kind of time.
Go to jrnyquist.blog. Do you have Cash App or PayPal available there if people want to pay that way?
PayPal just changed its thing, and it's a rigmarole. So I ended my PayPal, but I'm going to get a PO box, and so people can send me checks
Oh,
directly.
okay.
It's just much easier.
Sounds good. I'll get you a copy of this, and in your research, I've got two books I want you to look at and a movie that may give you some more pieces of the puzzle.
The
I'm going to
Colossus
email.
movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I want you to see the Colossus movie. And folks, if you haven't seen that, it is worth a watch. It's pretty amazing. Um, Jeff, God bless you. And your email, what is your email?
jrnyquist@aol.com.
My friend, have a great weekend. We'll see you again. Thank you for coming
All
on.
right. Okay, Shannon. Thank you.
God bless you. Get some rest over there this weekend.
Yeah.
I want to thank Jeff Nyquist for coming on. We held him 3.5 hours. There's so many questions to ask Jeff. He is an amazing researcher and historian, book author. Be sure and go check out his website, jrnyquist.blog. And this will be available up immediately here in just a moment. Well, praise God. So, yeah, folks, let me see real quick. Yeah, there's a book out there called Demonic Foes by Richard Gallagher, and MD. 25 years as a psychiatrist investigating possessions, diabolical attacks, and the paranormal. I got a copy of it. I haven't read it yet, though. I got so many books. Right now I'm just reading the Word. And I'm going to continue to do that, but as I get some spare time, I'm going to dip into my electronic library. I've got probably 1,000 books that are of interest to me to read, but when do you get the time to do it? Folks, go get the Colossus. The Foreman Project. Now, do any of you still have DVDs? Anybody got a Blu-ray player? Those are awesome. But it's hard to get them now and get stuff for them. But you'll need it to get some of the stuff off Amazon unless they made a digital copy. And the Colossus is one that they have not done a digital copy of as far as I know. Unless you have ways to find it. But I got mine in Blu-ray form a year or two back, and it is pretty good. Tell me if it isn't good. And if it isn't something like that could come right off the pages of the news. Not to mention, Elon Musk has named his supercomputer Colossus. I know he's watched that movie. I'm surprised more haven't seen it, though. It is definitely a good one to watch. What else do I want to mention here? Well, that's going to complete our broadcast weekend. We will be back Monday. New schedule, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. till we finish. In case you haven't been tuning in a while. We do have Soulmate Prophetic Hotline once a month. That'll be an evening show. But apart from that, and also I do a program once a month with Messiah's branch, Stan Catlin. He can only do evenings. Everything else is AM. So we're here Monday through Friday. I've got all the shows uploaded through yesterday to Podomatic. So you can get the MP3s immediately, the audio, if you go to Podomatic. Everything through yesterday that we've done the last 2 weeks. I was behind in uploading them. I'll get today's shows uploaded, and then I'm work on YouTube over the weekend, upload, fix some of the videos, titles, and so forth. Still working on a master project to get everything we've ever done up online. I'm going to have it online by November, if not earlier. That's my goal. Drop dead date. November 1, it's got to be done. So, I don't like the sound of that, drop dead. I'll break that in Jesus' name. I'm not dropping dead. How about you? No, you're not either. We break that curse in Jesus' name. But where did that come from? The drop dead date. Doesn't sound right. We're going to get it done by November 1. Praise the Lord. 12,000 shows we've got now. Racked up. They're all free. Now, if you like what we're doing here, you'd like to help us, because we are fueled by love offerings. Anybody like to abound to a good work and help us out? I think this is a good work. You're making these archives available when you support this program. To anybody who'd like to go over there and get them, they're free. And you're helping us to be able to crank out new content. You can give it my website if you choose to do so. No hard pitch. Freely we have received, freely we give. And if you want to help us, God bless you for it, OmegaManRadio.com. Make sure you get on my newsletter, OmegaMan.substack.com. And help us. I would like to see, how many we got right now? We got 18 people tuning in still. Had to look around my camera. I'd like to see 1,800 tuning in live. 18,000. Come on, I know we can do better. Help us out by sharing a program with a friend. And again, you can go to OmegaManRadio.com and find links to everything that we talk about here on ways to listen, ways to get the archives, etc. Well, that's it. God richly bless you. Have a great weekend out there. Thank God it's Friday. And Shabbat Shalom to you. And we'll see you back, God willing, on Monday. Friday, we do early bird shows. So if you're just coming in, we had an early bird show at 5 a.m. We were on with Eric Hurd. 7 a.m. I was on with Michael Cummins. And then we just did a 3-hour show with our special guest, Jeff Nyquist, that started at 10 a.m. 3.5-hour show. Pretty amazing. Okay, folks, love you all. God bless you. And we'll see you soon. Thank you for tuning in.